Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'll give you just a second just to take your seat and a little bit of a settle. I was actually expecting it to take slightly longer than that. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Glasgow Science Centre. If you don't know myself, I'm Lee McCann. I'm the AGS Communications Manager. I've had the privilege of being involved in Project CAELUS for roughly 3-4 years now. I've actually lost count from that side of things. Hope you've had a great chance to grab a coffee through the house, connect with people. You're going to be hearing from a lot of different panellists today, great videos to share with you, insights as well. So we're looking forward to sharing all that there. A bit of the housekeeping. If the fire alarm does go off, the staff at the Science Centre will keep us right. They will be directing us to the nearest fire exit. If you are in the car park, you can get your car parking validated at the front desk as well. So, that's the main thing, getting your car parking validated, okay? I know everyone needed that announcement. On to today. I say there's a lot of different videos, insights that we're going to be sharing with you as well. Not everyone, we're a 16-strong consortium, not everyone has a chance to present, so we've got videos interspiced with today. But we're actually going to kick off with a very packed agenda, as you can see on the screen there. We've got different coffee breaks in between, lunch as well. But I'm going to kick us off with a quick video of Project CAELUS.
Scotland's landscape is as diverse as it is beautiful, but its remote communities often face challenges in accessing essential medical supplies. Now, a groundbreaking project is set to change that. AGS Airports, the owner and manager of Aberdeen, Glasgow and Southampton airports, is leading a consortium to develop the UK's first national distribution network using drones. Known as CAELUS, this innovative project is part funded by Innovate UK's Future Flight Challenge funding. This is the second successful round of funding for the CAELUS consortium, which now includes 16 partners. Together, they are working to create the first national drone network designed to transport essential medicines, blood, and other critical medical supplies across Scotland, including to some of its most remote communities. The consortium has designed drone landing stations for NHS sites across Scotland and developed a virtual model or digital twin of the proposed delivery network. This digital twin connects hospitals, pathology laboratories, distribution centres and GP surgeries, ensuring a seamless flow of medical supplies across the country. NHS Scotland is bringing its Once for Scotland approach to the project, ensuring that the network is designed with the nation's healthcare needs in mind. The second phase of the project involved live flight trials, with the aim of removing the remaining barriers to safely using drones at scale within Scotland's airspace. CAELUS is not just about delivering medical supplies. It's about ensuring that every community, no matter how remote, has access to the care it needs. The future of healthcare logistics is here.
So firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to Stephen Noble and his team. Stephen's in the room today as well. He's done a lot of our videos throughout, so I just want to say my thanks to him. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Now, for Science Centre for today, we have a special pre-recorded message from the Aviation Minister, Mike Kane.
Hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me to say a few words, and I'm sorry I can't be with you in Glasgow. When Attlee's government founded the NHS over 75 years ago, they were guided by a bold ambition to offer healthcare free in the moment of need to all Britons, whoever they were, whatever they did, wherever they lived. Of course, this came with challenges aplenty, many of which we're still facing today, and that's where work like yours comes in. I first saw a model of this project when I visited Aberdeen last year, and now it's great to see Project CAELUS paving the way for a revolution in healthcare access. Over the last 4 years, you have all pulled together, pooling your insight, ideas and expertise to test and improve, scale this innovation, which could improve health outcomes in remote and rural communities, not just in Scotland, but right across the UK. By slashing delivery times for vital medicines, bloods and supplies, you are building the healthcare equity that Attlee's government envisaged. This technology also supports this government's mission, not just to make the NHS fit for the future, but also to grow the economy and deliver opportunities for all. That's why I have recommitted my department to the goal of seeing beyond visual line of sight drone operations across segregated and integrated airspace. And I will soon be chairing a renewed Future of Flight industry group, getting experts, local leaders and governments around the table to seize opportunities that are ahead of us. While my officials will continue working with community groups across the country, and I know the role of future aviation in healthcare will be an important part of these discussions. We'll be guided by your insights and your experience at every turn, and over the coming months and years I look forward to working with you all to unlock the future of aviation. For now though, I'd like to say congratulations again on the hugely successful Project CAELUS. It hasn't passed me that CAELUS means sky in Latin, and you should all be proud of your efforts today and beyond to reach for the stars. And I hope today's event fuels your inspiration for the journey ahead, because, and I'm sure you all agree, we're only just getting started.
Correct, we're only just getting started. Now, we've had a couple of videos already this morning, so thank you for the Minister for his kind words. Our first live presentation today is from Fiona Smith, who is the Sustainability Director at AGS Airports. She is also the Project CAELUS Director. She's going to be telling us a little bit more about the overview of the journey of CAELUS, so please welcome Fiona to the stage.
Thank you, Lee. Much appreciated. And thank you all for being here today. So I'm going to leave it to our partners today to tell you about what we've achieved in CAELUS. And I really just want to give you a welcome and just tell you a little bit around about how CAELUS came to be and why we think it's been an important project. So firstly, I'd like to thank the Aviation Minister, Mike Kane, for his warm words. The Minister has been hugely supportive of CAELUS, and as he mentioned during his visit to Aberdeen Airport last year, he said that it demonstrated what the next era of aviation can look like, which is high praise indeed. I'd also like to thank the Science Centre today for hosting us. It's really quite apt that we're here. This building and charity celebrates the spirit of innovation and shows just how that spirit can change the world for the better. And change is exactly what we wanted to deliver when work on Project CAELUS first got underway 5 years ago. It was Marco Fossati. Marco, can you make yourself known? So it was Professor Marco Fossati from the University of Strathclyde who first approached AGS and called me and asked if AGS would be willing to lead a bid for funding on the Future Flight Challenge from Innovate UK to create a digital twin of drone flights for the NHS. When Marco went on to explain that this had the potential to revolutionise the way healthcare could be delivered here in Scotland, we were only too happy to sign up. But on one condition: we wanted to go beyond creating a digital twin. We wanted to actually fly the drones and demonstrate this network, and we wanted to do it at a national scale. We quickly assembled an impressive lineup of partners, and I'm really delighted that so many of you are here to celebrate success today. Together, we've pooled our collective experience and expertise to deliver what is the UK's only fully integrated drones medical logistics network and project. Importantly, it's demonstrated the art of the possible and provided a blueprint for future R&D initiatives. It's no understatement to describe CAELUS as a project of firsts. We have had many. We've delivered the first public business case with our colleagues in CPC for a medical drone service. More on this today as you watch the presentations. We've delivered an economic assessment of the impacts medical drone use could have on the Scottish economy, and this output estimating by 2030 a GVA contribution of 16 million, just under 700 additional jobs, and over 3 million in tax revenue generation available. We've achieved the first movements of items between mainland health boards in Scotland by drone, and most impressively developed a new blueprint for NHS innovation projects, with CAELUS being the first project of any type in innovation for NHS in Scotland, where every single health board, the Scottish Ambulance Service and National Services Scotland have all been signed up formally and engaging on the same project, which we're very, very proud of. Our journey has been marked by other significant milestones and accolades. CAELUS secured the Scottish Transport Award for Innovation 2 years in a row, most recently being named Most Innovative Transport Project in Scotland. Additionally, our work on noise perception earned a commendation at the prestigious John Connell Awards, which I'm reliably informed is known as the noise Oscars in the industry. CAELUS has also captured global attention and is regularly cited as one of the leading drone initiatives, with partners regularly invited to share their work overseas. In 2021, just across the River Clyde from where we are today, CAELUS was showcased at COP26, where global leaders descended on Glasgow for the Conference of Parties. Subsequently, we were one of only 4 initiatives that were chosen to demonstrate sustainability in aviation at the ACI World General Assembly. It even came to the attention of NASA, who invited us to sit on one of their noise working groups, which we did, and were represented by another partner, Arup. Accolades and recognition are clearly welcome. However, the greatest sense of pride has come from the work that we've been able to do with the NHS. We've developed over 100 prioritised use cases with NHS clinicians and conducted flying missions in the east, west and north of Scotland. We've created a digital twin of a national network. We've designed and built landing prototypes, tested surveillance and telecoms technology. Furthermore, we've designed and verified airspace constructs in preparation for flights that are fully integrated in future and engaged publicly with stakeholders from all demographics all across Scotland, with partners NATS and the Drone Office. These truly amazing achievements are testament to the dedication and hard work of everyone involved in Project CAELUS, but now we must look to the future. The framework's not ready yet for drones to be operated as business as usual, so it's incumbent upon all of us as the industry to continue evolving the outcomes of this project. In doing so, we can provide the confidence to the market, our stakeholders and customers like the NHS, to let them know that we're ready to deliver these incredible services both safely and efficiently. Scotland's renowned as a country of innovation and invention, and I completely agree with Minister Mike Kane when he stated that Project CAELUS has demonstrated what the next era of aviation could look like. I hope you enjoy hearing more about our successes and our outcomes today from all of our partners. Please ensure to review our learnings. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you to Innovate UK for the grant funding that's enabled this incredible project, and thank you for your belief in Project CAELUS. And together as an industry, I hope that we can continue shaping the future of medical logistics and setting new standards for innovation. Thank you.
Hazel Dempsey, who is our Innovation Programme Lead for North of Scotland Innovation Hub. I had to practice that a couple of times, Hazel, to be honest. And Thomas Livermore, who is the Senior Systems Engineer from CPC. Welcome.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's nice to be here to talk about the project. I'm Tom Livermore from Connected Places Catapult, and we're going to talk to you about the use cases that the NHS have been working with us on, also the business case and the roadmap. So I'll hand over to Hazel to talk a bit about the NHS.
Thank you very much, Thomas. So I'm delighted to be here today. I can't believe it's almost 2.5 years and the project's coming to a close, but as Mike Kane has said things are just beginning. So as Lee mentioned, my role, I'm the North of Scotland Innovation Programme Lead, and for the last 2.5 years I've been a national programme lead on something called Project CAELUS. I guess I just want to take the opportunity at this point to say that role was shared. It was shared with Karen Bell, and in the modern world we were job sharing. I think it was more a kind of 2-for-1 deal. And I just want to say that her resilience, tenacity and inspiration has made up for my shortcomings, and I've really enjoyed working with her over the last 2.5 years, so it's been fantastic. So my role today is to tell you a bit about the NHS context and the NHS innovation context in relation to Project CAELUS. No, that's the wrong way. Okay, so the NHS has a long-standing history of innovation since it was founded in 1948. Innovation remains a cornerstone of the NHS, which in current times remains a priority more than ever before. In fact, earlier in the week, I had the privilege of attending the First Minister, John Swinney, his brief on how the NHS would reform and modernise, and he spoke about innovation as a cornerstone. So I'm sure there's multiple NHS colleagues in the room today who weight that detail and look forward to taking that vision forward. So in 2023, the Scottish Government's values-based healthcare action plan outlined 6 tenets that would enable delivery of value-based health and social care in Scotland, and innovation and improvement were seen as essential to deliver sustainable services. The CAELUS milestones and deliverables that you're going to hear about over the course of the day will be aligned closely to the recently published programme for government in 3 of its 4 priority areas. These are growing the economy, tackling the climate emergency and ensuring high quality and sustainable public services. Other strategic drivers for innovation include the UK Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, who highlight the importance that innovation has in contributing to the economy and in building a future for the current and next generations, and the importance of using technology for good. Within Scotland, our national innovation strategy is focused on building fairer, wealthier and greener communities. A key role for the innovation hubs within NHS Scotland is to consider how new and emerging technology from other sectors could benefit healthcare delivery. So a question for us was, what are the challenges that drone technology could help to mitigate if it was introduced into healthcare systems? Is drone-enabled medical logistics feasible? Is it viable, and is it scalable? So in true NHS fashion, we wanted to have focus group discussion with all of our stakeholders from across Scotland. So back in 2022, we held a day of just that, focus group discussions, and we brought together clinicians from all over Scotland. We were in a room with University of Strathclyde colleagues at Strathclyde with consortia partners. We had paramedics from the Scottish Ambulance Service, oncologists, GPs and pharmacists from as far away as NHS Shetland joined us in the day. It's important to point out that the NHS already has a fantastic logistics system that keeps the NHS working every day. However, there are 3 important points to note. Number 1, we do move medical payload in both unplanned and urgent ways every day, often relying on courier services and carbon-heavy taxis. Number 2, we do rely on commercial ferry and commercial airlines to transport both medical payload and patients. And number 3, patients at times have to travel significant distances to access treatment. And as Fiona's alluded to, we started off probably with about a dozen unique use cases. However, as we began to socialise the idea of drone technology and socialise that further through our innovation test beds and with our colleagues in the Scottish Ambulance Service, we began to shake the tree and lots of unique use cases came to bear. So with over 100 unique cases, there had to be a way of theming and prioritising those use cases. So you'll see in the slide behind me, the 4 key priority areas within those territorial boards. I do want to mention that there are unique use cases within the Scottish Ambulance Services, especially linked to the movement of defibrillators. You will hear more about that in detail this afternoon. Local chemotherapy administration means that more vulnerable patients could stay closer to home rather than having to travel to large specialist centres for treatments. Now that affects, it does affect people in the Northern Isles, it affects the north of Scotland, but it does affect remote and rural communities in the west coast as well, in the west of Scotland and in the border. So it's a challenge for all of Scotland. Faster transportation and more efficient use of blood products means faster treatment and improved patient outcomes. Faster diagnostic testing means that treatment can start sooner and may in fact keep patients at home rather than being admitted unnecessarily to hospital. So I'm going to use an acronym here. Now the NHS is known for acronyms, but I'd like to say at this point, so is the aviation community. You've got your fair share. We do have something called the RUM list. Does any of my NHS colleagues want to say what the RUM list is in the room? Rare and urgent medicines. So rarely used and urgent medicines are medicines that are stocked regionally and often require carbon-heavy solutions to move them in an urgent and unplanned way every day by road. And we do that a fair bit. So working with CPC, they had the huge task of trying to understand the economic benefit of all of this and making sense of this in terms of the strategic outline business case. So I think Thomas, he's also been fantastic and has worked really well with NHS colleagues and I think is almost an honorary NHS member, so absolutely understands the culture really well, gets in touch in plenty of time, knows that we can't give you calendar dates within that 8-week window. So anyway, I'm going to hand the time over to Thomas and he's going to chat about the process for that strategic outline business case.
Yes, so a business case. I think the first question is to ask, why do we need a business case? So a business case is the way that ultimately decisions are made in the public sector. It's where all the information comes together for decision makers to sign off on an investment that would be needed for something like a drone delivery service. So ultimately, to realize the vision of CAELUS, a business case will need to be approved. But at this stage of the project, we wanted to really understand what the service would look like and the impacts, and we needed to drill in on specific use cases. There were hundreds of use cases that have been mentioned, but to create a business case that was robust, we really wanted to drill deeper into to understand how the NHS currently move items and provide services for patients in 3 focus areas. So we spent a long time working with the NHS to understand what those 3 focus areas should be, and then using regional examples of routes where the use cases would actually be realized. We used the Treasury guidance around business cases, so that touches on the strategic, economic, commercial, financial, and management side of the service intervention that you're proposing. And at this stage of the project, we looked at a strategic outline business case, which is the first stage in a process which ultimately leads to a full business case, which is what a procurable service would need in the future. So by zooming in on 3 focus use cases, we were able to gather a rich set of data to support the benefits that were being proposed by colleagues in the NHS. But we wanted other health boards and other use cases to benefit from this. So the business case is publicly available, and we hope the way it's presented is transparent and the methodology is clear, so other health boards and other use cases can benefit from it in the future. So for the strategic outline business case, this first stage of the process, the question is really, is there value in moving forward to developing that business case in the future? And the key areas that we looked at were the strategic value and the economic value. And the answer is really positive. For the economic value, I think we've heard already about the strategic alignment from the NHS. From the economic value, I'll talk a bit more about how we looked at the costs and the benefits of these use cases. So firstly, we needed to understand how business as usual is done in the NHS for these use cases. So depending on the use case, that could involve taxis, it could involve vans, it could involve a combination of the 2. From the drone side, it was really important to understand from the commercial partners in the project what a drone service might look like in the future, and involve costs such as the infrastructure that you'll see a bit more about today, but also the operational costs around pilots, Also acknowledging that drones aren't able to operate all the time in all conditions at the moment, so understanding what the cost of a backup service would be and transitioning away from that in the future. We also looked at projections of how the service might change. Demand might change in the future, population changes, but crucially technology changes. So the cost of drones, the cost of piloting and supervising drones, and all those changes in the future and how that impacts on the cost. One of the specific use cases that we'll talk to you a bit more about is the chemotherapy in Grampian, and Hazel will tell you a bit more about that.
So obviously this is just one use case out of over 100 that we've picked to focus on. So just to give you a bit more context, in and around this use case, each month a number of patients travel from the Murray region to Aberdeen, and that's probably a 130-mile round trip. Not all patients that need chemotherapy travel to Aberdeen. We do have some treatments that are done in Dr. Gray's. However, if you're travelling a 130-mile round trip, potentially immunocompromised, not feeling well, it's not ideal. It's a 1 hour, 40-minute journey one way and a 1 hour, 40-minute journey the other way. Hold on, let me go back. If you're not feeling good, and that's when driving conditions are good. I know there's several people in the room, including myself, that travel that road really quite frequently. Public transport is probably going to cost £25 for a rail ticket. The train still takes 90 minutes, and you're still going to have to get in a taxi or get in a bus to get to the hospital. So drone delivery would enable more chemotherapy products to be available at Dr. Gray's Hospital in Elgin for Murray patients to access services closer to home. So we were really very pleased when the value for money assessment for the transportation of chemotherapy was good. Obviously, there still needs to be further work. And again, I go back to this is only just beginning. You know, this is just a snapshot. We need recommended further work to look at the health benefits and to look at modelling the link between more patients being treated earlier, leading to better health outcomes. And we need to look at potentially modelling changes to the chemotherapy operating model at Dr. Gray's and beyond. So that just gives you a snapshot of the potential benefit just for one use case in one regional area and one patient pathway.
And just to give a bit more information about the value for money assessment, so you can read more about this in the report for the business case. But yeah, for this use case, the benefit to cost ratio was above 4, which is considered very high value for money. So looking at that, how that breaks down, the business as usual operations, you can see are relatively small. In the short term, the drone costs will be more expensive, but what we really wanted to highlight was the benefits, the economic benefits that are captured to really counter that difference in cost. As Hazel mentioned, the travel and the impact on people's lives, my economics colleagues have put a pounds and pence figure to that and are able to quantify these things. And ultimately, there are really significant benefits for society from that change in service and allowing people to receive chemotherapy close to their home. A number of other benefits are also captured here, but I think what we really want to highlight is this is just scratching the surface. We looked at benefits that could be quantified in the time that we had available, but there's a huge range of benefits that are still on the table to add to this equation. So in terms of what we would recommend going forward, as I mentioned, the other use cases that we've looked at as well in this business case, we think there's a huge range of benefits that are still untapped and unquantified, and understanding how the drone mechanism, the intervention of having a drone service would lead to the benefits that we're expecting is a huge area that would add to the value for money assessment. Along with that, scaling is a big topic as well. We did focus in on specific use cases, but ultimately a drone can be used for a whole range of use cases as we've heard already. So actually adding the benefits on top of each other is a really important way to understand that fuller picture of how drones can benefit the NHS in Scotland. The business case needs to be developed in terms of the financial management and commercial cases, and also comparing against alternatives to make a really robust case for drones as the intervention that would add most value. As part of this, working closer together with industry, as we have done in this project, is going to be really crucial going forward. So this combination of commercial partners and the NHS working together is really important. Finally, I'm just going to touch on another piece of work that relates to this project around the roadmap. And I think this gives a bit more context as well as how the drone service is expected to roll out in the future. From something small scale to ultimately a comprehensive national service for all of Scotland. So we produced a roadmap working with all the partners in the project, looking at not just the technology side of things and how that needs to develop. There are lots of roadmaps and action plans related to drone technology, but also looking at the wider piece, so understanding the market and societal context, and also the regulatory barriers, not just from the aviation side, but from the healthcare side. And then the commercial side and the resources needed to support that service. So bringing all of that together in one roadmap is a really interesting kind of way to look at what needs to happen in the future, and hopefully that will be useful for the ecosystem to learn from. So in conclusion, the work that we've done with NHS colleagues shows that there's real value in realising the vision of medical drones in Scotland. With the flight trials, we have a solid foundation of what the art of the possible is. With the evidence collected with the NHS and collated into the business case, we've got a really strong case for taking this forward for further work. And ultimately, we have the roadmap to guide us in the next stages to take this forward. So, thank you, everyone. And if you want to learn more about the work that we've produced, please come and talk to us, and the reports are available to download. So, thank you.
A huge thank you to both Thomas and to Hazel for the presentation on the use case and the NHS context as well. We're actually going to hear next, before our next live presentation, we're actually going to hear from one of our partners in the room via video form. So I'm just going to click play and let you then tell you all about it.
Hi, my name's Emily and I'm an architect at Atkins Realis. Our role within the project has been designing the physical infrastructure to support the network. This has meant designing landing pads and storage facilities for the drone. In CAELUS 1, we identified several different landing sites and their individual requirements. This is ranging from charging the drone batteries to securing the drone in between landings. In CAELUS 2, we began prototyping designs for the landing sites. A unique aspect of our design was that we created something that functioned as both the landing pad and the storage unit. The final design features an elegant shell-like structure which folds open and closes centrally. This circular structure not only creates an iconic ribbed outer shell, but also performs well in adverse weather conditions. The aim of our design was to create something that's easily transportable and demountable, fits well within a variety of different contexts, and something that's safe and secure to use.
The next presentation's in two parts, where we're looking at the results from the engagement and the noise perception. So firstly, I'm going to ask Annalise from the drone office, who's going to come up and give us the perception point of view, and then we'll have a video in between, and then part two as well. So here's your clicker.
I'm short, so. So how does it work? Down. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Annelise at the Drone Office. I am honored and pleased to be with you today at Project CAELUS closeout event. When we started our journey at Project CAELUS, we wanted from inception to engage with the public, because we thought that the feedback from communities would be instrumental in shaping the right innovation with the right impact. We also wanted to understand what was on people's mind. So, as you can see, we've engaged with the public through the Commonplace platform. And actually, 8,500 visitors engaged with us through that platform, and 878 people responded to our surveys. Now, we understand from Commonplace, they are experts at this type of engagement, that we've achieved excellent results in terms of engagement. So I think we can first thank everyone who took the time in Scotland to engage with us. As we go through the following slides, I'd like you to keep in mind that the engagement tool is an open engagement tool. We did not control who responded to the survey. We did not request personal details. Therefore, we cannot say for sure that we have exact, precise, proportionate representation of what people think in Scotland. So let's start with awareness. The data indicated that 67% of people were already aware of this solution. This indicates a growing awareness and interest in the innovation solutions that we're offering. Even more encouraging, a remarkable 86% of people felt positive about it. And when we drilled through several specific user cases, that level of support remained very strong. You can see that 87% of people felt positive about the user case just covered by Hazel, the idea of using drones to transport cancer treatments closer to the patients so that they do not have to travel back and forth to the hospital. Now, looking at what's most important for the public, what is the most valuable, the right impact, we can see that people first are looking for value and impact for the patients themselves, in particular, better access to care for remote and rural communities. And then the second part is value and impact for the NHS itself, speed, efficiency, reliability, cost savings. When we asked the public what they thought about the idea of expanding the use of the network beyond healthcare services, the public showed openness to the principle of it. Unsurprisingly, using the network to support emergency services and search and rescue missions received a thumbs up with 89% of positive assessment. Now that Sorry. Yeah. Now, looking at the concerns that were raised by the public, what was on people's mind, we can see that safety, security, impact on the environment, and privacy are the key items that are top of people's mind. And for sure, sustained success in our project will require addressing the concerns raised during that engagement. So, in conclusion, we started our journey at Project CAELUS with a question mark, and now we can stand today with a strong level of confidence that actually public perception is not a roadblock to our service. Our engagement activities have demonstrated strong level of support from the people in Scotland. Having said that, that support hinges on addressing the concerns raised and sustaining that level of support, building trust and acceptance will also require continued open, transparent communication and engagement with the public. Thank you for your attention. Now I'm going to invite David at Arup, who will cover noise perception.
Thank you very much, Annalise. Much appreciated. We've got one video before we get to part two, so I appreciate you doing my job for me, though. I really do. No, we've got another video just before we move on to next as well. We are hearing from Dynamics, who are another one of our partners, so hopefully this just moves on.
My name is Marta Romero. I'm the Director of Group Safety, Quality and Compliance for Dronamics. Dronomics designs, builds, and operates a large fixed-wing drone that can carry up to 350 kilograms or 3.5 cubic meters of cargo at a range of 2,500 kilometers or 1,500 miles. Despite living in the 21st century, access to essential goods like medicine, it is still not equal for all. That's why we joined Project CAELUS, because with a drone that can travel faster and cheaper and connect airfields currently unserved by traditional air cargo, we can make those goods arrive to remote communities in Scotland. We have faced many challenges and we have overcome many of them alongside our partners. And we have successfully submitted all the documentation, the material required by the UK Civil Aviation Authority to obtain our approvals to operate. However, some of the challenges mean that this process takes a long time, and we will work outside the Project CAELUS to continue with our aim, which is to serve remote communities in Scotland, to set our footprint in the UK, and to continue to build the company that we want to be, which is the first world drone airline.
So that gives you maybe a size of the scale of the drones that we're talking about here. Obviously, we couldn't get Dronomics drone inside the room today. Slightly, it's a bit bigger than we would do as well, but we do have obviously one version of the drone that you can see later on as well. So obviously, as Annalise probably said, now I'd like to invite David Taylor up from Arup to talk a wee bit more about the noise perception of it as well. So please welcome David.
Good morning. I'm going to try and very briefly describe to you the experiment we did to look at people's perception of noise as part of the CAELUS study. Environmental noise is widely recognised as a serious pollutant. For example, in England in 2018, noise from transportation was attributed to 130,000 disability-adjusted life years, so that's lost years of good health. Although the effects of conventional transport noise are becoming fairly well understood, the sound of multicopter drones and eVTOL aircraft is very different in character, and there is no substantial body of evidence as yet to demonstrate when noise is a problem. Consequently, there's no regulations or assessment criteria to help with planning for their use. Project CAELUS presented a unique opportunity to undertake a study of annoyance for noise from drones for healthcare provision specifically. We've been using sound demonstrations, so calibrated listening tests, to help people understand and comment on the impacts of environmental noise for around 15 years now. The turning point of our use of that technology was introduction of HS2, which is another novel source of noise. Sound demonstrations provide the best way for people to understand the impacts of what noise would mean for them, because they can actually listen to it and hear how they and comment on how they perceive it. For CAELUS, we recorded the Skyports drone to be used and created sound demonstrations for overflights and takeoff manoeuvres. These were deployed in an online survey using Commonplace's platform to gauge people's responses. The drone sounds were set in the context of 3 different soundscapes, from rural to urban. We did 2 parallel studies, one which was clearly designated as a healthcare provision, and the other had no indication of the use case and was left to the participant to their imagination. So I'm going to quickly show you an example of one of the sound demonstrations Please don't take anything away about the level of noise that's going to come out of this, because this hasn't been calibrated at all, but hopefully gives you a flavour of what we did. So this is the sound at 60 metres away in a rural soundscape for the drone taking off. Probably enough of that. So these are the brief summary of some of the results from the study. So this is we did qualitative and quantitative analyses. I'm only going to dwell on the quantitative today. This is for the overflight operations. And this slide shows people's reported level of annoyance on a scale of 1, not at all, to 7, extremely annoyed, for overflights at 3 altitudes. The colours indicating a different soundscape type. You'll see there's a reduction in annoyance for higher altitudes, as might be expected. It gets further away, it gets a little bit quieter. And annoyance is lower when it's in a noisy environment, again, as might be expected. This second chart compares the data from the medical use case and the anonymous use case study. People are quite noticeably less annoyed by the noise when they're aware of its medical use. This slide is a similar illustration for the takeoff operations. Shows the same charts, but for this time, the most noticeable point here is, I think, that the annoyance is much greater even at the same distance, whether it's, in this case, horizontal distance or altitude in the previous slide. The annoyance is much greater for the takeoff manoeuvre. Otherwise, the trends are generally similar to those for the overflights. Again, the medical context being less annoyance than the other use cases. So drone noise is clearly a significant issue, likely to lead to complaints. Drone noise is clearly a significant issue. The annoyance caused is likely to lead to complaints, cause annoyance that presents a risk to health and well-being, and will affect planning for introduction of drones. This will be affected by the context in which the sound is experienced and the use case. The study has shown that people are more tolerant when the drone is used for healthcare and other societally beneficial applications, and the latter point being from the qualitative comments we got back. So out of those conclusions, we'd propose the following recommendations. Enabling the public to understand the use case, perhaps through the drone colours or markings, or an app to track drones, will help to gain public acceptance of their use. Noise needs to be considered when planning vertiport locations, and should also be an important consideration in the design and procurement of drones or drone services. So this study has not only supported Project CAELUS, but also feeds into the emerging global body of evidence and understanding of people's response to noise from drones. Clearly, though, this all needs more research. This is a single case for a single drone, and we need to take this further to enable a better understanding of the risks and the development of policy, regulation and guidance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, who holds the distinction of my favourite animation through that whole slide deck as well. I don't know if anyone else was just memorised, just watching it just go up and up, but maybe it was just me, you know, I might be tired, it might be me. So, we have one video to show you at the moment, and this is from our consortium partner in Telsius.
Have been designing and manufacturing environmentally sustainable and regulatory compliant sample transport and temperature controlled packaging for over 25 years. The CAELUS project aims to introduce the UK's first national distribution to use drones to transport essential medical supplies throughout Scotland. The use of drones to replace existing logistic networks will reduce NHS delivery times of essential materials to help improve patient care. Intelsius have developed Orca Drone, a lockable, connected, multi-use packaging solution which is scalable for multiple drone platforms. The solution is fully customisable for various medical payloads, including dangerous goods, with optional high-performance temperature control for 2 to 8 and 15 to 25 shipments. The integrated logging capabilities of Orca Drone provided real-time visibility of payloads and flight data via the OrthaFlight platform throughout flight trials. This includes location, temperature, pressure, humidity, payload security and vibration. This was critical for validation of the packaging within future NHS frameworks. Current processes often rely on the pre-validation of temperature-controlled systems. However, BVLOS drone flights present unique challenges in chain of transfer and packaging validation. Intelsius are privileged to have been a part of the CAELUS project from the beginning, and we really look forward to seeing the impact on medical payload transportation and patient care in the future.
Thank you very much to Intelsius for their insight as well. You'll actually see on the, your left, my right hand side, we've got examples of the packaging that you can have a look at as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to our first mid-morning break. There are teas and coffees through the house. Surprisingly, we're actually running slightly early on time. So I'm going to ask you, we're going to be back in the room for 11:15. So thank you very much for listening for this morning. So, the next session. At the moment, you're getting to get an idea of the scale and the size of the CAELUS project, from where the drones are housed, the perception of the noise, down to the drone scale size of itself as well. What we're doing at the moment is we're going to look into the next form as well. So how do drones integrate into modern airspace? And we're finding out more about the fulfillment software service that's been created through Project CAELUS. So our first presentation is a 3-in-1. So I'd like to welcome representatives from NATS and ANRA in this Innovation in Airspace presentation. So can I please welcome up Jacob Blamey from NATS, AJ Modja from ANRA, and Gareth Bourne from NATS. Just take a seat, gentlemen, just 2 seconds, because we're going to have to move to our first video as well, but I want to make sure you've had your nice little entrance and not walk on, you know. Play the game, guys, yeah? You know, nice little walk on as well. So we're going to hear first from our Tracks, who are our first video as we come back.
I'm Simon Smith from Tracks International. I'm an air traffic management and airspace subject matter expert, and along with my colleagues, Tracks was responsible for creating airspace on a temporary basis to enable skyports to operate across our 3 main areas of Scotland, and the process is heavily regulated by the Civil Aviation Authority. And as part of that process, we had to collaborate and discuss our plans with other airspace users, and particularly the general aviation community, the military, emergency services operators, to ensure that we could all operate safely within a very compressed and similar piece of airspace. The end product was that 3 routes were flown across Scotland. And that involved collaboration with many of the air traffic service providers. It all happened safely, effectively, and has pointed the way for the future in how we can operate drones across Scotland and the whole of the UK in a safe and integrated manner.
Thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, so my name's Jacob Blamey. I work for NATS, and alongside AJ Modja and Gareth Bourne, we're going to be talking to you about the innovation in airspace. Now, a key enabler for the NHS Scotland medical drone delivery service is the safe integration of beyond visual line of sight drone operations into our airspace. And we're going to be talking about how we came up with the concept of operations that describes just that, and also what a typical drone flight looks like. So let me start with the concept development journey. And to begin that, here is a timeline that shows the journey that we've been on over the last 4 or 5 years. And it spans, as you can see, both the CAELUS 1 and CAELUS 2 projects, describing how the concept has been developed and also validated along that timeline. So back in the CAELUS 1 project, that was all to do with laying the groundwork, laying the building blocks, understanding the fundamental requirements, specifically around the ATM-UTM interface that would be needed to support these types of operations. Moving then to CAELUS 2 and building on the work that we did in the previous projects, what we started off with there in this demonstration phase was the creation of a concept of operations document, a really comprehensive description of how we see these drone operations being integrated. That was then followed by a validation phase, which takes individual requirements, aspects of the concept, and it tests them over the course of a series of simulations and also live trials. Finally, we then took the feedback, the learnings from all of those validation activities and fed that back into the ConOps to deliver a final version. So what I really want to stress from this slide is how far we've come over this journey, over those years. The ConOps that we now have as part of this project has been built on many years of research. So again, looking back, if we consider what was happening over 2 years ago, towards the end of 2022, we held a series of workshops where we collaborated with many of the partners involved in the consortium to try and understand what this concept of operations actually looked like. And I'd like to thank Fiona for having the foresight to take this photo at that time so we can look back at it now. But what I think really comes to the fore when you look at this photograph is how that collaboration worked, how we pooled all of our collective knowledge and expertise and how the airspace worked to form the basis of that concept of operations. Now, what's also important to recognise is that within the consortium, the partners actually represented all of the key stakeholders that we were envisaging for this future ecosystem. So we had the airport operator, the ANSP, the drone operator, and many, many more besides. And it's through using those different perspectives on the same challenge that we could build a really robust, thorough concept. So what did we end up with? So this airspace integration concept of operations document describes how drones can safely coexist with other airspace users to deliver for the NHS Scotland project. And I think what's really important is that while we developed a set of high-level principles initially, we then went down into the detail of what are the digitalized services that are needed to support these operations, what kind of airspace constructs do we need to have, and ultimately what kind of information needs to be exchanged cooperatively between the different actors to enable these operations to go ahead safely, efficiently, and at scale. And on that point of scalability, I think it's also important to talk about how this concept not only describes the initial deployment of these over the hopefully next few years, but also looking much further ahead at that vision for the project of a comprehensive nationwide service offering. I'd also like to point out that while obviously this was created in the context of the CAELUS project and therefore targeted primarily on medical drone deliveries, actually what we've described in this document is much more broadly applicable to many different use cases of beyond visual line of sight drone operations. And that, I think, really speaks to the value that is contained within that document and the learnings that we can take out from the work that we've done. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the CAA for their involvement in this concept development journey. We had various touch points along the way, and it was really helpful having that third-party scrutiny that enabled us to refine the concept that we were developing, but also to ensure there was alignment with the regulatory vision set out in the airspace modernisation strategy. So that concludes my part of the presentation, talking about how we've developed the concept of operations, how that theory was brought to life. Now I'd like to hand over to AJ, who's going to talk about how that translates to a typical drone flight, a drone journey. AJ.
Thank you, Jacob. Hi, my name is AJ Moda from Andra Technologies. We worked with NATS and a couple of the other partners, obviously, to build this entire digital mechanism by which a number of the communication was developed. But a key part to the ConOps was essentially, from the start, it places all of the stakeholders involved in the journey of the drone on the same page. And then we can take the next step in terms of the ConOps elements of how we were going to demonstrate these things through trials. So I just want to kind of highlight a couple of the key principles. We are talking about a cooperative traffic management. So we're moving away from kind of silos of traffic management. We're going towards digital sharing of information between different service providers in order to ensure that we have timely information being shared amongst different stakeholders. We want to make this work in both uncontrolled airspace and controlled airspace. And I know there's a number of issues and discussions going around the UK around how we do this, and that conversation will probably go on beyond the end of this event. But I think what we're trying to identify are the key learnings that can be taken forward. So what was UNRWA's role? So we came in with one end-to-end integration product, the delivery management system, that would allow the customer to make orders for medical products that could be shared with the drone operators electronically, and that information around the drone flight plan, the execution of the flight plan, and where the drone is, so it can be tracked, position information can be shared with ATM in this case, but also with other UTM providers who would want to use that information. So the idea about cooperative operating principles, information is being shared in a timely way amongst everyone. We want to do this in an automated manner. So I say we want to move away from human operators. So the air traffic controllers can still monitor and supervise, but there is an automation element in this that can make drone operations a little bit more timely. And as a result of all of these things, we want also to showcase what the project can do. So from ANDRA's perspective, we are showcasing our delivery management system that is available both on mobile and on web, the web element being in development at the moment. But from NATS's perspective as well, we want to demonstrate how UTM and ATM can share information between them and how that can provide value for what they wanted to do with that data. So a little bit about the drone journey itself. Obviously, it was tested out in a number of the trials that were done in the project, successfully as well. It starts with the NHS order. And so the customer essentially goes onto an application, they select what they want ordered, they can do that a day in advance, a week in advance, whatever they want to do. It's strategically placed in the system. The drone operators receive this information on another application, or they can build an API to receive that information. But what you basically get is is an order for a supply to be made at some point, a delivery to be made, no different from how you would put in an order on Uber Eats. That information is then taken by the drone operator. They create flight plans, operational intents, that can be shared within the ecosystem. So this is using ANDRA's UTM stack to share the information widely. And then depending on where this drone is going to fly, between what kind of airspace it's going to fly, it can be routed to whoever it needs to go to. For the specifics of CAELUS, it was always that the information was being shared with NATS and their ATM systems. So I'm going to pass over to Jacob, who's going to talk a lot more about that integration and how that worked. Thank you.
Thanks, AJ. Good morning, everybody. Gareth Bowen. I'm a consultant with NATS and NATS Services. And from the NATS perspective, as a consortium partner, I was the technical solution lead for the NATS aspect of CAELUS. So there's been two words consistently resonated with me through the chats we've had so far in the presentations. One's opportunity, the other word is challenge. And CAELUS has provided NATS and the consortium partners with an opportunity really to understand what does this mean to us. So from an air navigation service provider perspective, what actually does this mean? Where we understand that we need to accommodate uncrewed aircraft, we need to understand what the use cases are. We need to understand the validity of the use cases, and we need to understand the touch points along those journeys. And as air navigation service providers, we need to understand, what are these touch points and what do we need to do? Then there comes the challenge. Air traffic control is a safe, well-established framework of operation. It works for over years, it's developed, but the concept of air traffic control is safe. We bring in a new technology in the uncrewed traffic management domain. Technology that's novel, procedures that are novel, use cases that are novel, and the operating environment is novel for us as well. So how do we do this? Interestingly enough, working with ANRA, we identified that the data exchanges between the uncrewed traffic management world and the air traffic management world is critical to understand and have an awareness of what the requirements and demands are of the environment. So we set ourselves a task of understanding what these touch points are and how we're going to do it. And we realised there is currently a delta or a gap in the air traffic management world and the uncrewed traffic management world that we need to fill this gap. So we looked at how can we do this. So we evolved an airspace management function and then a technical interface with ANRA for the trials. What that does is the flight intent notification is submitted, so the drone flight intent is submitted. It's passed on from the UTM service provider into the air traffic world, where the airspace manager will look at the concept, look at the trajectory of the drone and decide against the planned aircraft movements in that airspace whether the flight plan is viable within the air traffic environment, within the airport environment. Within that role as well, we're looking at airspace configuration. So it's delegating volumes of airspace to the airspace manager to manage the strategic aspects of that airspace and the overall drone operations within it. That requires close integration and communications with the uncrewed traffic management service provider and the air traffic management service provider, so the air traffic controller, who's got overall responsibility of the airspace. So we set ourselves the challenge, how are we going to do this? So using the NATS air traffic control simulators at Whiteley, we set about setting the task and the challenge at hand and going about it. We used a Glasgow-derived environment, so it was relevant to NHS, it was relevant to CAELUS. It was an international commercial airport. We looked at the drones or the uncrewed vehicles that we're using within CAELUS, so we looked at the skyports, drones that typically fly below 400 feet out of the way of the conventional sort of traffic that's in the area. And we also looked at the dynamics as well. How does dynamics integrate into this airspace? Bearing in mind that see and avoid, and see and avoid between, with crewed pilots in a flight deck is a safety underpin for the environment. Take the pilot out of the cockpit, i.e. put an uncrewed traffic vehicle in there, that provides additional complexities. How do we get the drone, so the dynamics drone from its point of starting engines to enter the runway? When it's using the runway, how do we integrate that with the traffic pattern? How do we integrate crewed traffic how do we integrate uncrewed traffic, so the smaller drones, the skyport drones, in and out of the flight restriction zones around an airport without impacting the airport itself? So what we did, we considered the see and avoid sort of principle and thought, well, actually, we need to look at a detect mechanism. So we need to enable the airspace. So by enabling the airspace and making all aircraft, with it crewed and uncrewed aircraft in that volume of airspace electronically conspicuous, i.e. they're telling everybody where they are digitally, that then provides what's called a recognised air picture. The airspace manager's function within this environment is to monitor the conformance of the drones inside the volume, to activate and deactivate the volumes as required. We looked initially at scheduled drone deliveries, so your medical samples under a scheduled sort of system. And that seemed to work really well. We could integrate that into the environment. But then we thought, okay, we have other use cases which would require on-demand. How do we do that? So then we're looking at rapid activation and deactivation of the airspace. And this all requires and is underpinned by a high-fidelity data transfer of information. So we used a rule set. We used the current rules of the air, where aircraft will avoid each other and they'll have a recognised behaviour in doing so. And we also placed a priority in the airspace. Said, okay, well, crewed aircraft in the airspace will have priority over uncrewed aircraft. Where all aircraft is conspicuous, that works. The aircraft will just avoid itself. The drones will avoid the crewed aircraft. Where an aircraft is not conspicuous and we need to get into the airspace, or it could be a high-priority aircraft, an air ambulance, a police helicopter needs to get into this airspace, then we'll look at mechanisms where we'll actually segregate portions of the airspace and allow the blue light aircraft to get priority in sort of an air bridge construct to go through. So we've looked at the airspace modernization strategy for the CAELUS zones, so we worked aligned with that. And we started thinking really deeply about these different use cases and how the crewed aircraft are going to avoid the uncrewed aircraft, until somebody said, well, what about the blue light drone? And that got interesting.
The simulations are putting processes to the test in a range of situations, including emergency scenarios requiring urgent priority access to airspace.
So the airspace managers received an urgent message from the uncrewed traffic management service provider. We have CAELUS 3 has been launched for a road traffic accident. The drone is actually carrying a defibrillator. So now we have a situation where we have the survey aircraft in the way of the life-saving defibrillator. The controller currently is speaking to the grid aircraft, trying to get the grid aircraft now away from its survey to allow the defibrillating carrying drone to deliver the defibrillator below that activity.
Emergency access is managed by activating and deactivating particular areas of airspace. The air traffic controller speaks with crewed aircraft, and the airspace manager digitally communicates with drone pilots. Direct voice communication between drone pilots and air traffic control is minimised. In this way, the airspace is safely cleared for the emergency drone to complete its life-saving mission.
So as you can see, we took what was initially a rule set and then adapted that rule set for a real-time environment. So we looked at the on-demand and a blue light drone and what this would look like in the future. So from the simulations we did with at the NATS Air Traffic School, the simulators, we demonstrated that we can scale safely. We can operate and integrate both crewed and uncrewed traffic in an air traffic environment. And more importantly, we were able to enable the airspace and the use cases for which require our services, and we demonstrated that in a safe and efficient way. So we've got to a point in the journey where we've, as air navigation service providers, as a consortium, as subject matter experts, we've demonstrated that the technology is there. We understand the demands and the requirements to be able to enable the environment. And we've demonstrated that we can scale as well to meet those demands. So what do we need to do now? Where do we go next? Commercialization of the environment is critical to generate the revenue and the investment to drive the industry and keep it going forward. Wider partnerships, understanding the use cases, understanding the drivers of the use cases, and partnering within the chain of stakeholders within the use cases. Looking at more digitization, automation within the system, And that's within the ATM world as well, integrating and harmonizing those data platforms and structures. And of course, none of this can happen without the regulatory underpinning and guidance. So there's a lot of work, both with industry and with the regulatory environment, that's required to build and develop and scale and industrialize this environment. So the future is shaped. Now it's just time to realize it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gents. Much appreciated. Very knowledgeable from that side of things. And I think what Hazel said earlier about aviation having acronyms is totally nailed on from our point of view. The irony is also, not lost that Gareth introduced a video which was him introducing himself. So in that vein, I'd like to introduce our panel host for the first panel is Lee McCann, the AGS Communications Manager. Which, if you're not listening, is me, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to invite guests up. We're going to have a chat about the live flight trial. So I'm going to just introduce everyone up, and then they're going to have a wee bit of an introduction of who they are as well. So I'd like to introduce up Liam Day from Skyport, Karen Bell from NHS, AJ from ANRA, Alan Hesstein from NATS, Simon Smith from Trax, and Christine Walker from Intelsius. Simon liked that one, just in case anyone was So what I'm going to do, there's a couple of roving mics just in front of you just now. I'm just going to ask you a brief introduction, so people can understand, and a wee bit about your organisation and a quick summary of your involvement in CAELUS. And I'm going to repeat, quick summary for yourself, Simon.
Good morning. Call me Smudger, and my wife calls me Simon when I'm in trouble. I work for Trax International. I'm an ATM and airspace SME. And for CAELUS provided the temporary danger is required to operate safely.
Hi everyone, I'm Liam Day. I'm the head of projects at Skyports. Skyports is a drone airline, so we don't manufacture drones, we operate them. And on CAELUS, we were obviously the drone operator, so working with all of the different partners to make sure that we're helping achieve the flight trials and achieve all the work packages within the project.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Bell, and I am from NHS Scotland. I currently work with NHS Grampian and was employed as National Innovation Programme Lead, shared with Hazel, as she mentioned earlier. The aim of our view of being involved in this project was very much to understand, as Hazel and Tom indicated, whether this technology was feasible, viable and scalable, and whether actually the drones could be a force for good in the way that we deliver our services across healthcare in NHS Scotland and the wider NHS community across the UK.
It is on.
There we go. Hello.
There you go.
Alan Heseltine. I'm the General Manager of Air Traffic Services at NATS Aberdeen, obviously working for NATS, one of the main air traffic providers across the UK. At Aberdeen itself, we are responsible for the aerodrome and approach control services for Aberdeen Airport itself. We also look after the approach services for Sunbury Airport up on Shetland, and what a lot of people don't realise is looking after the lower level airspace over the North Sea from the East Anglia coast off Norwich all the way up past Aberdeen, past Shetland into Norwegian and Icelandic airspace, primarily in service of the offshore energy sector. And that creates a bit of an interesting scenario for operating BVLOS operations, which is what brought us partly into this project with CAELUS and AGS, using some of that expertise in facilitating the flights around Aberdeen and up to Dr. Gray's.
Hello, my name's Christiana Walker. I'm Product Design Engineering Team Lead at Telsius. We are suppliers of sample transport and temperature control packaging, and our involvement in CAELUS was the development of the packaging for the 3 different drone platforms that we used. Well, technically 4, because we also designed for Dronamics. So yeah.
Thanks. I think you heard from me earlier. AJ Moda from Android Technologies. We're a business of, so we come to aviation from inside out. We're all aerospace or aviation engineers within the business. I lead a team of around 10 engineers here in the UK. And we work mainly on these newfangled technologies that you've heard of, the acronyms UTM or UAM. But it's essentially digital, automated air traffic services that are transmitted machine to machine, and how that may change the way air traffic works in the future. I mainly lead all of our work here in the UK and Europe. Thank you.
And also a double dose of age as well. Can someone just pick up the other mic just to test it for me, just for that? Make sure it's switched on. There we go. If you pass it down this way for the moment, because actually my first question is actually for Simon as well, or affectionately known to us as Smudger from our point of view as well. So, you know, a lot of work has gone into the planning, the approval process for these live flight trials. We've flown in Aberdeen, we've flown in Edinburgh, we've flown from Glasgow Airport, we've flown to the borders, we've been everywhere, we've been across to the Isle of Arran. So what insight can you provide to us about the challenges you faced from that side and how they were overcome?
I need much more than 25 minutes to answer that question.
You've got a couple.
Thank you. So, in creating 3 pieces of airspace which would segregate our activity from other airspace users has been a key part of enabling the drone operation for Liam Skies. That follows a civil aviation authority process to integrate that airspace, or segregate it more to the point. And in doing that, we have to engage with all other airspace users to enable that safe activity. In terms of focusing on one piece of airspace and how that activity happened, I'll focus on, as Hazel talked about it earlier, the route between Elgin and Aberdeen. So we involved Alan's team in terms of NATS at Aberdeen, RAF Lossiemouth and their air traffic service provider, and clearly all the operators of other operators of aircraft in between. So the challenge was, in effect, selling BB loss operations as a safe and efficient method of doing business. That was the challenge. Through the engagement process for the airspace users, as opposed to what Annalise was talking about earlier in terms of one use, that was the challenge to sell it as we can do this, we can do it safely, we can carry equipment which will allow other airspace users to detect our aircraft and vice versa. And through that whole process, we eventually got our CAA approval. The route in particular between Aberdeen and Elgin was most successfully operated, ironically, on Friday the 13th of December, where we completed 2 routes. And so, to summarise, we completed that route safely twice, and most importantly, enabled the transfer of medical payloads between those 2 hospitals, as we referred to earlier, which is the whole end game of this process. So it is capable. The airspace and modernisation strategy supports that moving on. It's going to be talked about later this afternoon. That system can speed up to enable this to happen across the whole of the UK.
I suppose then that picks up the point. So Liam, as Skyports, as an aircraft user in this space as well, you know, how was CAELUS impacted? You know, the scalability of the work as an Aberdeen project, you know, must have been great to be involved with as well. And, you know, has it impacted the way you might think about medical supplies in the future using Skyport drones?
Yeah, absolutely. We've, of course, done some medical deliveries previously, but working on CAELUS for over 2 years, we've obviously spent a lot more time with the NHS, understanding all of their needs and their desires for a drone delivery service in the future. Whether that's dangerous goods approvals, whether that's integrating with some kind of order management system, and making sure that we're delivering it ultimately to the right place, at the right temperature, at the right time, and also bringing the benefits to the NHS. Specifically for Skyports, we've kind of had a lot of learnings around the kind of technology improvements that we can make Obviously, operating in drones in Scotland, as you can imagine, the weather isn't particularly pleasant all of the time. So making sure that we've got an aircraft that can deal with as kind of higher weather limitations as possible is pretty key. And we've also worked with our providers to be able to improve that over the course of the project. And also then the outside bit of the NHS, working with Alan and his team to ultimately integrate with their guys to work with ATC. I think the final flight, we will really communicate with them really closely and actually allowing the flights to happen in and out of Aberdeen CTR. And the processes around that will definitely be used going forward, allowing us to do a lot more of these kinds of operations in controlled airspace, which is really beneficial to us and, of course, many other stakeholders on the project.
You know, you can really tell the collaboration that's gone into all these live flight trials from that side of things as well. And, you know, you've just picking up that you've mentioned NHS cocktails, obviously. Karen, from your side of things, you know, what about the outcomes from the live flight trials? You know, any surprises? You know, what's the NHS point coming through as well? We've obviously already heard from Hazel this morning as well. I'd love to get your take.
I think for us, there were a few surprises, but I think for us, in terms of the project, one of the key ones was we started off with 1 or 2 health boards. There was initially interest, and we ran CAELUS 1 in NHS Ayrshire and a bit buy-in around the west of Scotland. We knew there was interest up in the north, and we approached the north and we got buy-in with NHS Grampian. And so when we reached a point where we were going to write the next stage of the grant, we also had SAS already bought into this concept and wanted to understand what it might be able to do for their service. So as a team, we were fairly secure about our ambition and what they could do. What was, I think, surprising for us was when we actually were secured the grant and we were actually able to go out and start talking to our other colleagues about this, was the demand that was there right across NHS Scotland. So this is the first project, and I know it's been said earlier, but it's really crucial to understand the importance of being able to run a project right across Scotland, to have buy-in across all of the health boards, SAS and NSS, who oversee our logistics service in Scotland. And that buy-in has remained throughout the life of the project, even during the periods when it would look to an outsider that we weren't doing very much, but there was a huge amount of planning going on in the background. So I guess that was one surprise for us. Second surprise for us was opening up of airspace, and I'm not going to say much more about that and how difficult it was and challenging it was, and how some of those challenges remain. But that was a huge learning point for us in the NHS. And coupled to that was around, and really reassuring, was that actually we were talking with consortium partners who spoke the same language around safety as we have in the NHS. I have a long history of working in innovation, and as does Hazel. And when we engage with our industry partners, there isn't always that same element around safety when you're talking to people that we need to have when we're introducing something to the NHS. And the final thing that I want to say is just the altruism, and I want to take an opportunity to thank not just our NHS colleagues who are in the room and our project managers, some of whom are in the room, but also for our non-flying boards, their engagement with that and altruism, but also really importantly is our colleagues on the panel today. It was a difficult project, we're not going to deny that. There were lots of pivots, that became one of our key words, but the solution focus and the altruism and the desire to make a difference for the NHS was inspiring, and very grateful to everyone for that, so thank you.
There's almost an ecosystem that's being built here that you can see as well. It's the opening of the airspace for the airspace users, bringing in the NHS as well. I'd love to get an Intelsius point of view here, so obviously looking at yourself as well, because obviously maintaining that critical payload, it's so important as well. You know, take us through a wee bit about that as well, because you know, there's designs that were made that are incredible.
Yeah, we came into this project and we knew that we would need to both meet and improve the requirements, the NHS requirements for packaging for sort of standard ground transport. And when we approached this project, we approached it sort of very much from our sort of background of experience. So some of those requirements might be things like safety, temperature control, dangerous goods. And we sort of approached it as we normally would. So we would thermally qualify packaging in a very sort of theoretical way. We would take the packaging, we'd put it into some of our thermal test chambers, and we test it against some really sort of challenging profiles. And coming out of that, we thought, obviously, we've tested this against extreme winter profiles, which happen in Scotland, and we got really good durations that should last the entirety of the project. But what I think we really learned is that you can't, for projects like this, you can't just do things theoretically. So coming into live flight trials, we were immediately starting to get excursions that we didn't really expect. And you really realize that actually working with NHS and working with projects like this, you have to work with sort of, say, the processes and equipment in place, and you have to be quite dynamic in how you approach sort of a project like this and be sort of quite innovative. So coming into this, say, for example, the fridge temperatures, they were set slightly warmer than we were expecting because they obviously need to house a lot of different payloads in hospitals and not just for one thing, and we can't be buying sort of dedicated equipment as a good example. So from that, you then need to sort of work with what you've been given to create sort of different conditioning processes, different standard operating procedures to try and approach this so that you can get the outcomes that you want. And I think really live flight trials for us sort of validated a lot of the work we're doing for both the NHS, for the packaging, and I think for a lot of other partners to sort of show that we can deliver this and we can meet the requirements and improve on the requirements for the NHS.
I appreciate that. It just blows my mind a little bit when you're thinking about it's not just a box that is put in, it's everything that goes into it. It's the temperature control, and all this has been thought out throughout CAELUS as well, about maintaining that critical payload as well, and so you can get a scale of it as well. I suppose then I'll move on to yourself then, AJ. We've seen a little bit about the ANRA system, you showed it as well. You know, what insights have you gained through working through this?
Thanks, Lee. I mean, the list is pretty long. One of the things that something like Future Flight allows us to do is to collaborate in an agile way. Everything's about agile these days. It's not systems engineering in a V diagram. Otherwise, I'd start talking about when we did open access UTM, which was quite a long time ago, and where we are right now. But that agile component allows us to learn, build, test, iterate, and go around. So from a delivery management perspective, you know, if you look at the workflow and we engage with the NHS, one of the first things you learn is the drone is quite a technical object, and putting it in front of NHS staff who've never perhaps engaged with a drone can be an issue. So in a delivery management system where there's a requirement that somebody within the NHS estate is capable of clearing a site for a drone landing, being able to engage with a drone, take a package out, load a drone, these are parts of learnings that need to feed back into our delivery system to change that workflow. That we couldn't have done without engaging with different boards and learning how you do that and trial it out. When we built the communication bridge with NATS, you know, we came in from one angle, which is UTM. NATS comes in from actually quite a massive volume 1 of MATS, if anybody's read it. Great bedtime reading. You look at those two worlds, and there's going to be a collision. But that collaboration allows us to pick out the highlights. You know, how do we want this workflow to develop? And how do we build the ConOps into it? So when we built the digital bridge, it was all about picking out the important parts, sharing the important details, and the information from the UTM world can mean different things for different folks. And so from an ATM world, it's around using the right terminology. I learned alerts mean different things from notifications. Making sure the information about positions, the flight plan is being shared correctly. And one of the most important things I think we did as part of the project was actually start developing an ICAO standard flight plan for a drone, which is in a digital format that can be shared, and that's kind of a useful thing.
Appreciate that as well. Alan, I'm going to bring yourself in as well, because you know, I know how much Aberdeen were involved in that last live flight trial. All these prepared, everything that was going into this live flight trial as well. So, you know, tell everyone a little bit about the role that NATS played in, you know, ensuring the safety, the coordination of air traffic during that time as well. And, you know, what's the application for the future, effectively?
So it was that culmination of everything we'd all worked towards, this collaboration. We have spent a lot of time working through developing procedures and processes. As AJ mentioned, we have a very large volume called the MATS, which is the Manual of Air Traffic Services Part 1. There's also Part 2 as well, if you want the sequel. But we're governed by rules, regulations, and as a lot of people have mentioned here, safety is paramount. Everything that we do has to be safe. If we want to do anything that doesn't quite lie within those regulations, we have to provide assurances, we have to provide the arguments that what we are about to do is going to remain safe for the conventional aircraft, but also the drones, the people on the ground. We have to take into consideration all of these elements. So we work quite closely with everyone in this room, basically, around developing those procedures and the regulator. We built upon the work that our colleagues did at Glasgow for the initial trials of the temporary segregated airspace within controlled airspace, and took that to that next step. Now, I'm not going to bore everyone, I'll be here for hours, about the different volumes of airspace that we operate in, but essentially you've got uncontrolled airspace, which is a large majority of the airspace around the UK, where people can fly without talking to air traffic control if they so wish. And then you have controlled airspace, typically around the airports, and you absolutely have to have a clearance to get in there. So we had the challenge of operating within both those environments. The bit outside controlled airspace, creating this segregated volume, a temporary danger area, we've done that before. We've got 4, 5, 6 years of experience of operating in that sort of manner. So we were able to build on that experience and then look at the bit inside controlled airspace. And that's where that coordination came in. That's where the procedures really kicked in. Lots of phone calls with Liam, getting updates on where we are, and then just orchestrating the traffic, making sure we had that right gap so that when the drone pitched up at the edge of controlled airspace, we managed to get it in with a minimum delay. And as you say, Friday the 13th, what a day. That last day, just everything lined up beautifully. Minimum impact to the commercial operation at the airport, very little impact to Liam and the drone, and we got that airframe in, landed, delivering the package, completing the flights, and that was just a wonderful moment for us.
Yeah, I remember getting the message to say, you know, like, it's almost like touchdown, you're like, yes, yeah. Little celebration as well. I also remember Glasgow Airport's Golden Jubilee, the call time being 2 a.m. That was a very cold morning as well. There's a point I'm going to pick up with yourself there, Alan, as well. You know, you mentioned regulator. So what, I suppose actually, I'd pose the same question to probably Liam and AJ at the same time as well. How do you see the results of the live flight trials, you know, influencing that regulator space and the public's perception of drones? I suppose you've got the mic, so you might as well start, to be honest, Alan.
I'll keep it brief and I'll let the other guys jump in, but it's back to that safety assurance piece. And whenever you're doing anything like this with the regulator, you have to prove that safety. And simulating things, writing things down on paper, that goes a long way. But if you've got real-world data, actual flight trials, seeing how that process worked, that creates that building block for whatever the next step is and lets you drive that argument forward next time. So I think what we achieved at the end of these flight trials is going to set us up beautifully for whatever we do next. Who wants to go next?
As I say, who wants to come in on that one then? Liam?
Yeah, I think with...
Yeah, it's on.
I think with the regulatory stuff, there's obviously a lot of challenges that we've had to work through, both with the regulator, with Smudger, with Alan, to make sure that what we're doing is ultimately safe. In terms of how that's taken forward, I think the best thing was actually what one of Alan's team said, that after the flight trial on the 13th of December, their team said, actually, yes, I do see this working. The procedures we've developed are usable longer into the future. And so having that feedback from someone that isn't the drone operator was really good to hear, and kind of shows to me, and hopefully shows to some of the rest of the NATS team as well, that actually this will work and we will be able to get the processes through and fully developed into a longer term solution. Obviously as Skyports, we are working closely with the CAA to take both the CAELUS learnings and also learnings from other operations to make sure that we're helping them develop the necessary tools to allow us to fly BVLOS outside of TDAs and segregated airspace.
AJ, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll take off with the public perception, I guess. People love drones. Everybody's got one in the house. Some people have 3. I mean, I've worked in drones for a long time. My first drone flew at 60,000 feet. That was a Zephyr 7. Since then, it has been a number of drones, but technically they've been coming down, so I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Drones are here to stay. We just need to make them safe. And when we talk about drones operating on a commercial basis, that's aerial work, there's already a regulation and a framework around the vehicle, around their operational, around their risk assessments. When I sit on the JARIS's Annex H, which is safety services for SORA, and SORA has just been released. We're talking about a risk assessment framework that's going to allow drones to be operated at scale. We have a mechanism by which we know from the regulatory perspective that there is electronic conspicuity, that we need traffic services, right? Those are given. There are gaps in detect and avoid and a couple of other areas. So now we need to basically work as a community, as an industry, to solve those challenges so that you can then combine them all into one piece. So if you imagine a puzzle, there are some missing pieces, and we need to complete that puzzle before we can get to, I think the date at the moment is 2027, set by the CAA, so we need to work towards that.
I'm going to open up to the rest of the panel as well, so it's quite an open question, obviously. What do you think the significant outcome of the light flight trials would be? And if you wanted the audience to take away one thing from this project, these light flight trials, what do you want it to be? Quite loaded that, to be clear, as well. Whoever wants to come in.
Just quickly then, the real outcome is that we have proven that we can transport by drone viable medical products between laboratories within Scotland, and that could be rolled out across the whole UK. It's the way ahead, fundamentally.
Yeah, I think it goes back to we now know that it's feasible, viable. The next stage is we want to scale it and pick up on something that Alan said. Seeing is believing. We've now shown our NHS colleagues that this can happen. They've seen the drones flying between their health boards. They've seen the drone fly across the Clyde to the Isle of Arran. And they now want this. Last night at the meal that we had, colleagues were saying, we were asking other colleagues not connected with the project, wanting to know when are the drones arriving in the NHS. So there's a demand there, there's a need for it. If we're going to improve the way we deliver healthcare for our populations and for the carers that support those populations, then this is going to be an exciting tool going forward to help us do that.
I would just add as well that this has been a huge project. It's been a lot of different partners, and I think really one of the strengths of CAELUS coming through this has been the collaboration and getting this through the door, basically. We've proven that we can successfully fly in live flight trials, all of the different components coming together, and we just need to keep on building and growing on that until we can deliver this. Yeah.
Just so about, anyone else want to bring anything in there?
I'll add one more thing.
Go on, AJ.
It's about standards and harmonization. There have been lots of projects doing similar things, but it's taking those learnings and standardizing and harmonizing all of these concepts of operation into one that works for the UK. We can worry about export opportunities afterwards, but if it works in the UK, we'll have opened the market up.
I mean, I want to thank everyone for their time, for being part of the panel. I think there's some really interesting insight from what we did with the live flight trial point of view as well. So I'm just going to say thank you to everyone on the panel as well. So thank you to Liam Day from Skyports, thank you to Karen Bell from the NHS, AJ from ANRA, Alan Heseltine from NATS, Simon Smith from Trax, Christine Walker from Intelsius. Give our panel a round of applause, please. we're going to kick off the afternoon session. And firstly, we have for us is Dr. Jamie Hogg, who is the Clinical Director at NHS Grampian, and he's going to talk a wee bit about the regional innovation and the Once for Scotland approach. And we're delighted to be joined by Mr. Richard Lockhead for Business and Innovation at the Scottish Government, who's going to have our afternoon keynote address after Dr. Jamie Hogg. So, Jamie, over to you.
Choose the down button.
Yeah, no, step.
Thank you very much. While I'm standing between you and the Minister, so I'm not going to drone on for too long, you'll be happy to hear. I'm Dr. Jamie Hogg. I'm a recently retired Clinical Director from NHS Grampian, and I was a Clinical Director in the hospital in Mr. Lockhead's constituency, which he's been very supportive of, Dr. Gray's Hospital, that's appeared quite a few times today, and also been a Clinical Director in primary care in hours and out of hours, and on the islands of Shetland. So alongside those jobs, I was able to be Hazel Dempsey's wingman in the Innovation Hub on the CAELUS project. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about the innovation hubs around Scotland, just to give you a wee bit more context for what we've been talking about today. So NHS in Scotland is 14 territorial health boards, 7 special boards, and 1 national public health body. So one of the boards that's not represented on the map, as it were, is the Scottish Ambulance Service, which was very heavily involved in this project, as you know. The regional innovation hubs, there's one in the north, there's one in the west, one in the east. They provide the capacity and capability for the NHS to engage in innovation activity and create the conditions to support the development, delivery, and adoption of new technologies in the health and social care system. So they are a form of enabling infrastructure for the NHS and for companies and other organizations that approach us. We can translate research into innovative products and services and directly benefit patients, improve the NHS. And that was the bit I was kind of involved in. They offer life science companies the opportunity to evidence the potential impact of their technology through access to expertise, governance, and technical capabilities, such as trusted research environments, helping them to grow by co-developing with NHS Scotland. They do foster collaboration across a triple helix, we call it, industry, academia, and the NHS working together on common problems, and create close partnerships with other stakeholders, including health and social care professionals, clinical academics, patients, and industry leaders. And you can really see that in the CAELUS project very, very strongly, can't you? The innovation hubs ensure that the products and services developed are not only applicable to the NHS in Scotland, but ready for adoption in healthcare systems in the UK and internationally. We don't always achieve that, but we strive towards it. So it's part funded by the Chief Scientist Office. And I'll just tell you a little bit how I got involved with CAELUS. So about 3 years ago, I got a phone call from the CSO's office saying, could you phone around the north of Scotland and just see if anybody would be interested in the NHS in using drones? So mainly I just got people laughing on the end of the phone, like, don't be silly, that was never going to work. But it became clear that as we asked around, we discovered that Karen and others had been involved in CAELUS 1 in Ayrshire and Arran, which was really impressive. And there was some activity in Argyll and Bute with Skyports, the company who's been involved with CAELUS. And we were keen to explore how that could be developed further. So it's really key in Scotland that the innovation hubs don't compete with each other on a project like this. And what is really unique is that really the whole of Scotland has come together in NHS terms to get involved in a very collaborative manner. And you've heard quite a lot about that already. I suppose the drivers for us being so interested in this are on the slide here. So 26% of the population lives in 70% of the landmass. That doesn't really fully describe it, does it? But some of the distances that medicines and other products move in NHS Scotland are immense compared to the rest of the UK. So, you know, Shetland lies 140 miles north of Aberdeen, and long journeys on land Like between Aberdeen and Elgin is 67 miles, but if you stretch out to go up to Thurso and places like that, you're adding on another 120 miles. And some of these remote islands and remote areas have very low population densities, as you can see there. And the added sort of element here is that the areas that are becoming depopulated tend to retain their older populations. So people retire to these areas, and you get an inequality between the number of old people and young people. So I just don't want to say too much more, really. I'd like to hand over to Richard in a minute, but I think what has been really inspiring for the NHS about CAELUS 2 is that there's been a mind shift across the NHS from kind of laughing at the idea to asking, when will this actually be a reality? Because it does answer many of the problems which we're faced with. I wanted to highlight the work of some of the folk across the test beds who are in the room today. The clinical leads like myself, Janet Hoggs here, Ed was down in the east in Lothian, and the program managers have worked with them and with the project managers to bring all of this together in a very coherent kind of way. So it's quite easy for us as clinical leads now to go and speak to folk in the clinical community in the NHS and kind of explain what the challenges are to get this network up and running, and also to demonstrate to them that this has actually been done. So simulated chemotherapy has actually been flown from Aberdeen up to Elgin, which is one of the key use cases. Blood products, laboratory samples, been flown between Arran and the mainland. Lab samples between Borders General Hospital and Edinburgh. There's nothing like something really happening in reality to persuade people that this is something that's worth putting their effort into. So I just like personally to thank everybody who's been involved on behalf of Karen and Hazel in this project. It's been extraordinary, and it's been unique in that it's the first time that an innovation project in Scotland has involved the entire NHS without exception, and including the special health boards. So I think that's really all I wanted to say, and it gives me great pleasure to hand on to Mr. Richard Lockhead, who's the Minister for Business and Innovation, happens to be my local MSP, and as I said, has been a great supporter of the hospital that I used to work in. Thank you, Richard.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Jamie, for the introduction. As one of my local GPs for many years, and we worked together closely during his time at Dr. Gray's Hospital in Elgin, over those years, I'm just about to mark, come the next elections, 20 years as MSP for Moray. So we do go back quite a long way, and if we thought to ourselves that in 2025, we'd be meeting at Glasgow Science Centre to discuss the use of drones and the issues we're discussing today, you know, we might not quite believed it. So it just shows you how far things have come so quickly, and I guess that's one of the themes I just want to make a few remarks about. But it's a real pleasure for me to be here today and to see the drone, one of the drones. I know there's much bigger drones as well. And I think that particular drone was also involved in the trials of going from Elgin to Aberdeen. And I have to say, as someone that lives in Elgin, I could do with a drone to do that journey from Elgin to Aberdeen, which I regularly do. So if you've got any spare drones hanging about, let me know if it can take human beings. Perhaps go and see Aberdeen playing at Pittodrie, and then leave after 5 minutes and come back to Elgin, the way things have been going over the last few months. So, yes, but I'm here not as MSP for Moray, clearly. I'm here as the Minister for Business and in charge of innovation policy in Scotland. And on behalf of the Scottish Government, clearly today to take part in what is a very special event here as well, to celebrate Project CAELUS and obviously the final live trials across NHS Scotland that have been taking place as well. Now, as Jamie said, CAELUS is a really perfect example of how in Scotland we can bring together people in this relatively small country of 5.4 million people from across multiple sectors. Then we can streamline the way in which we develop and test solutions that not only positively benefit our economy, but have the power to transform the delivery of public services. And this is a great example of technology and innovation and what we need more of to transform our public services in Scotland. Innovation is already transforming how we deliver services across the NHS by offering more efficient, expedited and equitable access to health and care services to everyone across the country, no matter their geographical location. Again, a theme that was echoed by Jamie. So I stand before you as Minister for Business, but I've spent most of the last 15 years in government, and my original post was as Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs for 9 years between 2007 and 2016. And a big theme then, which continues of course to be a big theme today, is that we have to ensure we've got good public services in rural areas and more remote areas of Scotland. So this is a big part of finding solutions to ensure we can deliver that as well. So I've got a keen interest in this issue for all kinds of different reasons. I want to thank everyone involved, all the partners, many of whom I met just before I came up to speak, for what you've been doing, which really is truly inspiring, and I commend you all for all your efforts of working together. I am very optimistic about the work you're doing and what it will mean for the future, and I'm very supportive of the work you're doing and what it will mean for the future, and of all the innovations that you're championing across your various organisations. As my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care, has been saying, and has stated over and over, innovation is at the heart of our agenda for transforming the NHS. And indeed, you may have seen that the First Minister spoke on Monday at the National Robotarium in Edinburgh about the NHS, and of course he chose to deliver that speech in the Robotarium, not in the hospital, because of the theme of innovation and what that's going to play. So this is at the heart of the government's agenda. So what we're doing now is of course taking effective steps within the government to harness the power of innovation in the NHS. That includes the launching of the Accelerated National Innovation Adoption Pathway, ANYA, and the Centre for Sustainable Delivery. And of course, that met a few months ago. I couldn't be there because I was ill at the time, being treated by the NHS, even though I'd actually been at the beginnings of trying to get that set up, because it's so important to finally bring people together, get that initiative underway, and promote and expedite innovation in Scotland, particularly in that case, of course, in the NHS. So it's great to see that initiative now established. There is, of course, also the continuing cutting-edge work that's taking place across NHS Scotland, and that includes the outputs from the regional innovation hubs, of which, again, this project is an excellent example, alongside the really important work being conducted by the clinical trials units and across the wider research infrastructure as well. The research infrastructure is astonishing in the ecosystem we have in Scotland. You know, I'm very blessed as Innovation Minister. I get to visit a lot of the spin-outs and the companies that are involved in innovation over medical devices and treatments and other technologies that are really going to benefit healthcare and indeed social care in Scotland going forward. And it's totally mind-blowing. And it's all happening below the surface of the Scottish economy at the moment. These really high-growth sectors are doing remarkable things, and it's great to finally see the research coming out of our universities and being commercialised and being taken forward, because that's been a big problem for many years in Scotland, that we've had great professors and great universities and great research taking place, but that we kind of let other countries do stuff with it. Whereas we're now, over the last couple of years or few years, and particularly with all the momentum that's underway just now, like what you're celebrating today, we're trying to change that. So it's great to visit all those companies that are really going to make a difference to people's lives. I could talk for ages about the examples of what I've seen. This is, again, a brilliant example, but there's a lot happening across that landscape, so it's a really exciting time. We have to pursue all of that while at the same time pursuing the fundamental principles of the NHS, which is, you know, got to be at the heart of everything we do, publicly owned, free at the point of access, and of course that underpins our ongoing commitment to enable people to live longer and healthier and more fulfilling lives. So this is all for a purpose. And as a country, we really do have a rich heritage of innovation. From being the birthplace of Dolly the sheep at the Roslin Institute, to being the home of some of the UK's leading research centres, such as the Edinburgh Parallel Computing Centre, based at the University of Edinburgh, and the Living Laboratory for Precision Medicine in Glasgow, to give just a few examples, as well as all the various companies and spin-outs and other places I was just mentioning a few moments ago. So in my view, as a country, we have the tools to truly be a global centre of excellence for innovators, to base themselves here, to make their innovations become realities and deliver benefits for people. And I want us as a country to really capture all of those opportunities, as you're doing with this project. And that's why it's so heartening to see projects like CAELUS emerge and being developed right here on our doorstep here in Scotland. As the most advanced medical drone technology project in the whole of the UK, you have played a big role in placing Scotland at the vanguard of this innovation area. This does put us in a world-leading position in a sector which has such high growth potential. And innovation is at the heart of our commitments as governments. Of course, in 2023, we published our innovation strategy. With it, we are committing ourselves to an ambitious 10-year vision to become the most innovative small nation in the world, solidifying our unwavering commitment to nurturing and developing that innovation in Scotland. Industries are rapidly changing, with advances coming down the tracks so quickly. Technology and AI will take us even further, and I know NHS Grampian are represented here and others, and there's AI already being deployed, and we have to see a lot more of that in the coming years. It's going to be utterly transformational. We must not be scared of it. We must just get it into place and use it and develop it. In my view, that's obviously a big topical issue at the moment. And each of those, the emerging technologies, is revolutionary in its own right, but they're now converging. They're now converging with each other in ways that hold transformative potential for both industry and our society. One of my big tasks I see in the coming months, which I've kind of started already, is to cross-pollinate. So if you think of all the technology involved in this project, we have to cross-pollinate because we've got the different technologies emerging, but they should be speaking to each other, and all these sectors have to work closely with each other. So the space industry is important to medicine, and our critical technology sectors, semiconductors and photonics and all of that, is crucial to space, so they have to work closely together. And then you've got all the life sciences sectors and the work that's taking place, and that's really important for space as well, obviously. I could go on about other different sectors across the economy, like fintech and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of potential for massive cross-pollination, and industries in Scotland and all the technologies be speaking to each other closely, and we're trying to bring them all together, because that momentum will create new solutions and new innovations going forward as well for healthcare, social care, and so on and so forth. So we don't want just pockets and clusters of technologies in Scotland, which we're working on, but we want to speak to each other. So it should be possible in Scotland to do that, and that will bear huge fruit for the economy going forward. And this, of course, again, is a good example of that partnership working and sectors coming together and bridging the gaps between those sectors and sharing expertise and knowledge. So in this room today, everyone in this room today is at the heart of driving these projects and that change across the health service in particular they want to see. So I really just want to finish by saying that these technologies are about the economy, of course, going forward. They're about ensuring we deliver public services for everyone in Scotland to a similar level, and they're about reforming our public services going forward as well. I see this kind of technology and these kind of projects as absolutely key to reforming our public services in Scotland. Those in the audience involved in healthcare in particular will know all about the pressures of the ageing population and the costs involved and all the pressures facing our NHS at the moment in Scotland. And people are doing a wonderful job against a very demanding backdrop. But this is about reforming those public services so we can deliver even better services and more services against those challenges using technology. So it's really exciting to see this. Obviously, it's exciting to see it take place in my own constituency as well. Not only my own constituency, but across the Highlands and Islands and elsewhere. but I know it's going to be warmly welcomed by the public when they find out more about this. So we've got to shout from the rooftops what's happening and tell everyone what's happening, not keep it quiet. And I will do all I can as Minister to support the next stage of this going forward as well. The trials have been fantastic, but we have to do what we can to take it to the next stage as well and make the most of these opportunities. So thank you very much for everything you've achieved, and good luck for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, on behalf of the CAELUS project, for not only being our afternoon keynote address, but for those really inspiring words and very supportive words. It is delightful to hear, as you can imagine, as Project CAELUS. What we're going to do now is we're moving on to our final panel of today. And obviously, if you were in the morning one, you'll be delighted to hear I'm not hosting this one, so I actually am going to introduce someone who's hosting this panel. So I'd like to welcome to the panel hosted by Adam Caldwell, who's the Interim Chief Executive of NHS Grampian. Thank you, Adam. Yes, thank you. Floor's yours.
Well, it's great to be here. So I co-chaired the NHS CAELUS group, which is why I'm stood here with David. And I absolutely loved it, just being in about the innovation space and with all the incredible enthusiasm and absolutely incredible development that happened over that period of time. And from the position I'm in, I can absolutely say having all of the health boards working together as they did through this is actually something really phenomenal. And I've asked Karen and Hazel to come and speak to the board chief executives as we meet each month to illustrate what's possible as you work together in this collaboration. And clearly, the collaboration has been huge across multiple partners. So really excited to be here. Anyway, I was kind of thinking a bit about how to introduce people. I was thinking back to Leslie Crowther, and I was thinking, Gary Coots, come on down. Come on, Gary. Right, so Gary, who I'm sure you'll know, who's funded all of this from UKRI. Mark Bulston and Richard Ellis. Are you both coming up, Mark and Richard? Both from NATS, thank you, Mark. Lee Armstrong from Plane Finders coming up. Come on, crowd. Martha Romero from Dronomics. Fiona Smith from AGS, who we know, spoke this morning. And Andrew Chadwick from CPC. Thank you, Andrew. Super, thank you very much, panel. So absolutely the same format as before. We've got some questions that we're going to just run through the panel, and then a couple of questions at the end that we hope lots of people contribute to. So we're going to start off with just a quick introduction. We'll check you can use the microphone, right? So if you could just pass down the line and just say just briefly where you're from and how you've been involved in CAELUS, please.
Yeah, sure. So hello, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Chadwick. There shouldn't be a surprise, somebody's just said that. So I'm from Connected Places Catapult. I'm our Director of Air Mobility and Airports, so I look after all our aviation business and also have oversight and responsibility for all our Future Flight Challenge programs. And delighted to be here and delighted to be involved in this program.
Thank you. Obviously, you've heard from me today already. I'm Fiona Smith. I'm Sustainability Director for AGS Airports. And AGS have been the lead partner on the CAELUS project, which we're very proud and honoured to be asked to do.
And Martha Romero for Dronomics. I'm responsible for safety and compliance. As you heard earlier, Dronomics brings to CAELUS the large platform. We have a drone that is 16-meter wingspan, so clearly it would be a bit tricky to fit in this room today. And our role within CAELUS was to complement that network of logistics with a large cargo aircraft.
Hi, I'm Lee Armstrong. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Plane Finder. We're well known for our flashy apps that you can track, your parents going on holiday and all that sort of thing. But underpinning that is our receiver technology and the tracking of aircraft using electronic conspicuity at the end of the day. And that is what we provided to CAELUS, was the surveillance picture of that.
Super, thank you. Gary Cutts from Innovate UK, part of UK Research and Innovation. I'm Challenge Director for Future Flight Challenge. And some days we could describe ourselves as the funder of this, and I think we kind of hate that, to be honest, because it's so much more than the funding. So we'd like to think of ourselves as sort of an orchestrator that helps bring other people into the room and helps us collectively design this system working together. So yeah, we've been the kind of initiator of that collaboration.
Hi, my name is Mark Walston, Head of Business Development and Partnerships for NAT's New Airspace Users. I've been involved in CAELUS now for probably about 5 years, from when it was concept from Fiona and Marco to the bid and then into delivery of Future Flight to in 3 with CAELUS. So great pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks to the panel for coming out. So Martha, perhaps we could start with you. So you just said about your huge drones and that big cargo in the drone space. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the role that you think big drones are going to play in areas with limited infrastructure, and maybe some links to how CAELUS and healthcare might work with that remote places as well. So thank you.
Of course. So what our drone does is operating from shorter airstrips and bringing large volumes, heavy cargo to remote communities, to remote locations. Within the logistics world, it is known as the middle mile. So whilst traditionally we're seeing the smaller drones bringing the parcels to the end user, what we do is to carry large volumes closer to communities that don't necessarily get served by traditional air cargo. We don't intend to replace what we have currently in terms of aircraft arriving to large hubs, but we will bring the goods from those hubs to underserved communities. The technology allows us to do that in a more efficient, faster and cheaper way. For example, our pilots can be remotely located, so deployment of an unit is much faster when it's needed. And that is what we brought to CAELUS to complement the work that the partners are doing in terms of moving the cargo closer. And by using those unserved airports, we're also making sure that or create the jobs for those remote communities and use the resources available or that haven't been used today to make sure that that's happening.
Thank you very much indeed. Lee, so the use of sort of real-time data, and you spoke about it as you introduced yourself. How do you think the data is going to be used by, I guess, individuals, but particularly by industry? What do you think is the kind of next steps from that?
Yeah, so I think there's a few areas here that we've got to tackle. One is the generation of the data, and so that's through electronic conspicuity. And it's been mentioned about the drones having the electronic conspicuity, but they're not alone. You know, it was mentioned by Alan, I think, earlier of uncontrolled airspace, and people don't need to talk to air traffic control. Well, they also don't need to be electronically conspicuous either. And I think there's a big piece on that everything in the airspace, wherever it is, needs to be electronically conspicuous. God, that's such a mouthful, isn't it, whoever invented that? So what we have been enabled to do is, if everything is emitting a signal, we can give that picture. Traditional ANSPs, potentially their configuration does not give them the lower level. And what we've done is we've worked hard on producing hardware that is end-to-end. As soon as the signal hits our receivers, it's all encrypted, it's all processed. We manufacture them in the UK. There's a good story to tell there about the integrity end-to-end of that data. And that's kind of the business side of things and enabling this industry. But I think there's also a piece, going back to my initial bit about our fun apps and our things like that. We all saw recently the mass hysteria we had in New Jersey with all those drones that were flying around, and they weren't drones, but I think there's a big piece of using like our consumer side of apps to give people that understanding of something's flying, and maybe we don't tell them what it's for, and there's security implications and all those sorts of things, but we can give some reassurances that these things are flying and they're supposed to be flying in that airspace.
Yeah, thank you, super. And Fiona, so The AGS has been absolutely at the heart of CAELUS from the very beginning, to which we're delighted and really pleased you've had such a key leadership role. What's next? What do you think for AGS and CAELUS? What do you see in the future? Thank you.
So, and I'm probably going to steal it Gary's thunder here, who just suggested, you know, this in a conversation just a minute ago, but I wholeheartedly agree. What's become really apparent is that there's such a perfect opportunity for rolling out these services, in particular in Scotland, because of all of the things that we've talked about today, the demographic, the spread, the need in the healthcare sector, the remote and rural communities, and the geography of Scotland and just how unique it is. So there is such a great opportunity to roll out that service on a regional basis for healthcare. So, I mean, ideally, we would love to go ahead and be able to make that happen. The reality is that it's not able to be rolled out today. Unfortunately, we're just not in that position yet. There are barriers. There are some regulatory barriers. They're not the only barriers. There are others. You know, but we've also seen this morning the value cases there. The economic case is absolutely stands up. So we'd like to continue to support the partners that we've worked with, seeking further grant funding if it's available. And there's also certainly the opportunity for commercialisation in some regards. So AGS, yesterday we actually agreed as a consortium that we would remain an entity even though the project is finished, because we feel that there's great value in this collective that we've put together, and we want to make use of that going forward. For AGS, we're very committed to all forms of sustainable aviation. We see it as an obligation we have as this traditional aviation sector to support that. We also see commercial benefit in the future. So we're happy to look forward and look to exploit that where we can and support NHS in the making.
Yeah, fantastic. And certainly as we were talking at lunchtime, I think from an NHS perspective, the boulder's really, really close to the edge of the cliff. And I think it just needs that one more bit of exploratory work, doesn't it, before we can really make that mainstream and absolutely fundamentally of what we do every day. So our genuine thanks to AGS for the leadership they've shown across that. Gary, if I come to you, perhaps two questions to you. If there's anything to helpfully update, building on Fiona's bit about next steps, and I guess the bit I was really interested in is you've been leading this work nationally for across the whole United Kingdom for about 5 years, I think. What's the biggest thing you've seen that's different? Is a real sense of your knowledge on that?
So maybe I'll do them in reverse order. There may be a bit of flow, and I'm going to cheat slightly, and I realise I always do this last week as well, and just add a little bit more. But I can't answer what's the one thing. It's just too hard. So if I can, I'd like to just unpack how that's felt over the 5 years and how this has played out. Huge simplification to do it in a couple of minutes, but the starting point for me was, and I come from a big aerospace background where it's quite contained. Everyone knows everyone, and it's a handful of big players. Stepping into this was just how many people there were, how many organisations who had a part to play. Real eye-opener. And for those who remember our first events in Birmingham, we had something like 200 people. We could have had 300 to 400 people representing organisations. So step one for me, the really interesting thing was just the amount of different types of organisations and the breadth of talent there is. Second bit that's really important is then how that community came together, because if we'd just had 300 really clever organisations doing their own thing, nothing would have happened at all. So there's a big behavioural piece there of people choosing to work together. And that's led to really significant outcomes like Project CAELUS by that collaboration. Third bit, and this is maybe a bit controversial, but not in a particularly bad way, the regulator has moved on. And the regulations, I would say, are not where everyone hopes they would be, but we've absolutely started on a transformation journey. And, going back 5 years, that was the stages where we didn't know what needed to be done. We were running into barriers. There is now a transformation journey. So that, there's lots of bits to unpack here. But the fourth one, I think, is really important. And I'm conscious I think I might be speaking a bit later, so I don't want to say anything I'm going to say again later, but this concept of social purpose as well, that what we do, you know, I'm really techie. I love the techie stuff. I mean, that's what gets me out of bed, and I love complex tech I can barely understand. But it's so much more easy to be passionate about it if there's a purpose, a social purpose. And that's come through strongly. You know, the work we've done in social sciences, kicked off originally by Jill McBride, who probably still in the room from Strathclyde. That cementing, you know, we're trying to do technical things that matter to people. So four long bits there, but that journey from individual innovators to really socially impactful outcomes. And then go back to your first question, what next? To be decided from a funding point of view, still waiting to hear that answer. But directionally, I think it's obvious the things we need to do. You want to go to, from now to maybe 2 to 3 years out, that thing just wants to be utterly commercially self-standing, no more intervention at all. It's just making money from happy customers, where we want to get to. And the next step for us would absolutely be some kind of regional, 1 or 2 or 3 big regional applications where we go in doing this. CAELUS is a regional application. It's, you know, it's regional. It's a countrywide. It's a bit more than that. But doing that in a sustained fashion over many months with many flights. So big regional scale stuff that bounces into, as I say, just making money from happy customers and letting the thing run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the other key bit in the development, again, that we were talking about for the NHS is how do we figure out the entry into how we pay for it and make that part of our system as well. So I think that will be really, really important. Mark, if I could come to you. So NATS have developed the ConOps, and we heard about that this morning. Really great. I'd love to hear a little bit about your sense of, we heard the vision this morning, really, really exciting. You know, how do we get onto that vision, and what's the role that we all need to play for this sort of next chapter?
Yeah, for me, I think there's been a number of areas covered this morning. I think, you know, from the ConOps enabled us to understand what we need to do operationally, technically, what we needed to do for the current operation and the future operation. And that was anything from the technology, the procedures, the airspace, to the data that's required to run large volume, as Gary's just said, large volume regional operations in nominal and off-nominal situations. And I think, you know, testament to a lot of people that sat in the room here today, a lot of the bright minds and clever thinkers out there have enabled us to do that. We've now started to roll out some of that technology into some of our own airports today to sort of pump prime some of the capability that's there. So, you know, again, working with Fiona and AGS, we've now done that at Southampton and Aberdeen. We're looking at digitised operations to the lower level airspace to enable us to do that. That's allowed us to then take some of that learning and knowledge from the ConOps into the North Sea for what we're operating there. And I think for me, for the NHS, it comes down to what we do next. And I think there's 3 key areas for me. One of them is, you know, we have to understand, like Gary said, it's got to be done at a large-scale regional sort of operation. So we have to understand what that means from an integrated traffic management capability from the airspace. I think, and the airspace then possibly needs some sort of tweaking and changing. So the processes that are out there need to sort of stay agile to be able to keep up with the pace of change, because it's no point CAELUS doing that and then potentially other people out there doing that, and you do that airspace 3-4 times over from a change. You need to do it once, enable the airspace. I think that has to be done again at that regional scale. I think there's commercial models and investment. I think, as Gary alluded to again earlier on, we're ready to go with commercial operations. We need to be able to do it, though, at a whole-scale commercial type capability. So it's got to be done at volume. And for me personally, it'd be great to enable the NHS to get this moving. At the same time we do that and put the infrastructure in, enable others to share the benefit of that and share the cost of that to make it really cost effective for everyone. And then the final thing that link back to the airspace and links back to these types of operations is policy and regulation. You know, we need to keep policy and regulation moving forward, keeping the sky safe, enabling all airspaces and all that good stuff that we take as hygiene factors out there. But the policy and the regulation has to be commensurate with the agility and the pace of change that's coming through in what everyone's talked about today. So I think we can focus on those 3 key areas, pump prime it with some innovative commercial models and investment models through PPI type arrangements or something like that. I think we'll be onto a winner and we'll get this all moving at a commercial operation level.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Andrew, if I could come to you. So I'm interested in the sort of the user experience and the technology developments and how they come together in shaping future sort of aviation, but so I'd love to hear your reflections on that and your thoughts.
Sure, thank you. It's a big question, really. I think it's been proven in the presentations we've had today. Future flight is not about one type of technology or one type of business case or one type of use case. It's quite unique in the way that it brings together, particularly in the case of CAELUS with 16 different partners, how we collaborate right across the sector itself. So how it brings together different technologies, how we integrate those technologies, how we engage with the public, with customers, with end users, how we bring together the regulatory aspects which Mark has mentioned, and it really brings that together as an ecosystem. And I know some people don't like that ecosystem word, but it brings it together. So rather than focusing just on an aircraft, for example, which you would typically do in aviation, what we're doing is we're looking at a system itself, which an aircraft is one part of it. So it's quite a unique way of doing that. I think what we've shown in this program in particular, that this is real and that it is possible, and everything that we've demonstrated in the last few years, it is something that can and I hope will happen. And there is the business case to support it, and I think that's quite important as well. We're not just flying when we can fly for the sake of it. There is actually a business need for it. There are customers, there are patients that need and will benefit from these services. So I think it's bringing it all together in that collaboration. I think that's key. So there's no one particular technologies. Sorry, there's no shout out for one particular company. And in fact, I must admit, the technologies that we have and the companies we've brought together are so exciting. And I think need to work together to make what they do and bring out more. Just how great the work that and the technologies that you have. So I think it's that element of it rather than any specific technology. But this is real, and I think for taking it forward, as Gary and others have said, it's now a case of doing regular. I remember on the beginning of phase 3, we had our kickoff meeting, and we were asked by our CAA representative what we'd like to do, and I'd said I'd like us to fly. And I said, I'd like us to fly every week, please, starting next week. It took us a few months to get to being able to fly, but it's really about that. It's making this as business as usual, and that people get to see this, because people do get this, and they do want to see this technology, and they are expecting to start seeing it, and the more they see it, then I think it can only work, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And that was certainly the reflection from Karen in the earlier panel, wasn't it, about from an NHS perspective, people just seeing it happening and it becoming real. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to try and pin the panel down better than we pinned Gary down first time. We're after one exciting thing. Cast forward 10 years. So exciting now, 10 years. What's your reflection? Are you happy to start?
So 10 years' time. So I'll be in my 30s, 40s, I think, by that time. Okay, thank you. I would expect, so I'm making this a challenge for you, I would expect to see drone operations as business as usual across the country, in Scotland, across the UK, and elsewhere around the world. I would also like to see the introduction of more sustainable aviation, so the reduction of our emissions. So I'd expect to see that in 10 years as well. But for drone technology, which is what we're talking about today, is daily use right across a number of different sectors, not just in NHS and other medical sectors, but right across all other sectors. So having shared, safe, integrated airspace for all airspace users with the electronic conspicuity, whether they like it or not. And I would expect to see that in 10 years. I've been doing it long enough, and if we can't do it in 10 years, then, well, I'll come round and knock on your doors and ask you why you're not doing it. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, in 10 years' time, I think it's quite simple. I think it's data-driven, intelligent operations that are done as standard and normal. They're done at pace, they're done at scale, and they enable all airspace users to benefit from that in the lower level airspace that's not currently scaled. I think it serves a purpose. It gives us a lot of different options for our day-to-day lives. It can save lives. It's efficient, it's effective, it's green, it's scalable, and it's environmentally friendly and cost-effective.
Thank you. Fiona?
I mean, it's difficult to pick one, so I'm going to pick two. Sorry. So the first would be simply, so the Minister said, you know, the aim around having people living longer, healthier, more fruitful lives. Yeah. I'd like to see drones playing a meaningful part in that, in reality, by that point. I'd also really like to see from an aviation point of view, the next generation of aviators and those working in the industry, seeing drones as a force for good. Yeah. So I'd really like to see that perception of drones in this new aviation market being viewed as a really positive factor in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you. Gary, are you happy to?
Yeah, if I can just go a little bit beyond drones and be a little bit provocative, hopefully in a constructive fashion. So on the panel, particularly in AGS and NATS and others as well, there are some really good, well-established aviation companies that I think are brilliant at innovation, got all the right attitudes. But wider, in 10 years' time, I would love what we've been doing here to have shocked the larger aerospace industry out of its complacency. Yeah. And have it looking at no longer just whizzing people on their holidays by setting fire to hydrocarbons, pretending that they're a special case and are going to be let out of CO2 reduction. I'd love the technology coming here to have flowed through and see that huge acceleration of a massive transformation of the wider aviation industry.
Thank you. Martha, are you happy to go next?
In 10 years, I'd like to see a large fleet of Dronomics drones flying, using hydrogen and sustainable fuels to operate from, or being operated from airstrips around the world, and basically delivering the mission of our company, which is enabling deliveries, one-day deliveries for everyone, everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you. Lee?
It's hard going first, isn't it, Andrew? But it's also hard going last, I think, as well. So I think I'd echo what most of the panel said, but I'd extend what Fiona and Gary said, and it's to kind of inspire the next generation of the youth and the young people for today. They are our future, and we are protecting it for them. It sounds really contrived, that, but we are protecting it and securing it for them. But it gives them a place to build on what we've done and kind of take it off to the future.
Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel. My thanks to you all, and it was great. Thank you very much. If you'd like to come back, thank you.
And obviously a huge thank you to Adam for hosting the panel. Oh, all right, earthquake. Had a thought there that if me and Adam ever get together, we've got a roadshow ready for everyone to go from that side of things as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we're nearing kind of the end of the afternoon session. We have another presentation to go through, and then we have our closing remarks as well. So I want to just tell you a little bit about what we've got coming up as well. So in a moment, I'm actually going to invite Professor Marco Forsetti, who had the brainchild for CAELUS, and it's going to be brilliant to hear from him as well. And he's joined by Adam Lloyd from the Scottish Ambulance Service, and together I've seen them do a couple of different presentations before, and I think you're really in for a really great presentation. So if I could ask Marco and I can ask Adam to make their way to the stage here so they can go through their presentation, and I'll probably pick up that microphone that's dropped.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to start with a very brief introduction, as usual. I'm very glad to be here, sort of closing the circle of this big project with what could be considered somehow the last formal official presentation within the Project CAELUS. After that phone call that Fiona mentioned earlier this morning, seems like a nice way to close the circle within this drone-assisted medical delivery project that is scratching the surface. That's needless to be said. Here, I would like just to change a little bit the content of that has been proposed today by really going into one specific but very important use case that we started through CAELUS. And this is the use case where we are looking at how drones can make a difference, and this will be more clear in numbers in a few minutes, but will really make a difference in the emergency response. So in how we can help people suffering cardiac arrest increase their life of survival, okay? That's very important. Not that everything that has been said today is not, but this is one very, very nice use case. And so I want to start by talking to you about how we did this analysis, how we did this study. The baseline was CAELUS Digital Twin, we called SHEPHERD. It's not an acronym like we have been now talking a lot about, but it's just a way of saying we need to manage, operate a herd, a flock. I know that in English there are many different words if you're talking about fish, birds, or whatever. So let's talk about a group, okay, of drones flying, and they need to be shepherded to do something, hopefully saving lives, making our life healthier. And what Shepherd is a lens into the future. It allows us, it has allowed us, and it will allow us in the very next future to see, to explore, to understand, to think about how how drones can be useful, or how drones cannot be useful. So we're always talking about positive, but there's also a lot of negatives that we need to be able to address, to anticipate. Because if we are policymakers, we need to understand what works and what it doesn't. What are the risks? The risk to the safety of people who is waiting to his own chemotherapy treatment, but also safety for people who are there walking in a park and then see something flying over their heads. If we're talking about technology, how do we go about understanding what is a technology that has the potential to change the way we deliver health care? And that's something slightly different than medicines. It's health care. Okay, so it's not a drug, it's not paracetamol, it's not ibuprofen, it's health in a much rounded way. Okay, and so that's what we have done. That was the main driver behind Shepherd. And Shepherd is, again, a digital twin. Fine, there are many different ways to consider digital twins. I don't want to open here a lecture. I mean, even if I'm a professor at university, so I tend to be dragged away and diverging to this. But I want to show you, this is one for Scotland network of drone that we have obtained as one of the outcomes of this project. Here you have 14 boards, each one with its own network, hub and spoke model. The first picture at the top. And the picture at the bottom is how, through drones, we connect these networks for each single board. And we have been playing around a little bit with these examples, considering various payloads. Chemotherapy is one of those, blood is another obvious one, but one important payload that we have been now considering, and that's what we want to discuss here, is defibrillators. You know that, well, defibrillators are publicly available. There are PAD, public available defibrillator stations, across the city, across Scotland. But not always these defibrillators are used, and I will show numbers later on. And we want to see how, with drones, we can help Scottish Ambulance and everybody who is then called to respond in a very fast time to a call that says, there's a person who has suffered a cardiac arrest. What do we do? I leave now the floor to Adam just to create more the context of what I cannot say.
So we'll rewind the clock a few years to us sitting in a room with people that we never thought we would sit in a room with. So we had some paramedics, all in green, and we were sitting with some aerospace engineers, and we thought, what have we got ourselves into here? These are two groups that would never normally meet. And we were sketching out what is our warm-up to what a cardiac arrest is and what a cardiac arrest isn't. So anybody across the UK, if you pick up the phone 999, and ask for the ambulance service, do you know what what's the first question they ask you? It should be the same everywhere in the UK. Has anybody phoned the ambulance service recently? Well, but that's BT. What service do you want? So we want the ambulance service. I see Lee's hand up. Do you know the first question? Is the patient breathing? And the moment you say no, the second you say no, a signal is sent to an ambulance. So if me and my gaffer Paul were in an ambulance driving along, got the radio on, we're nice and relaxed, something pops up on screen and it says, somebody's in cardiac arrest, drive there. It happens instantly. That's the automatic part of our automatic medical priority dispatch. So we're sketching out this timeline, and then we drive like hell, and sketching out to Marco and Co. is to say, that's how quick we need this system to be. We don't know when it's going to be, we don't know where in the country it's going to be, we don't know who the person is, often, but we need to get there as quickly as possible. And the reason why we need to get there as quickly as possible is because there's no other medical conditions, essentially, where time is as critical. So if any of us, God forbid, was to have a cardiac arrest here today, well, you're in safe hands, first of all. I'm saying a few paramedics and medics are here today. They're looking sheepish. But if we did nothing, if we just kind of stood around for a minute or so, that chance of survival decreases by 10%. So if we just took 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just to get, oh, there's a bit of commotion, let me go over there, see what's going on, is everybody okay? 1 minute, that chance of survival has decreased by 10%. So the sense of urgency for us is absolutely paramount. So our intro into drones is thinking, we have a system already that we know is pretty quick, but we know that's not the full picture, and could we lean on the expertise of Marco and his team and others, like our wider consortium, to try and address this problem? So innovation for us, well, I believe there's not many of us in the room who would hopefully have seen one of these 1947 defibrillators, but the principle of what it does is the same. That 1947 defib is essentially doing the same as that very small defib that is now moving in a direction of people potentially having defibrillators in their own homes. No longer is it just going to be with us. No longer is it just going to be on the local gym wall. There is a direction of travel because the majority of cardiac arrests happen in people's home. But essentially, we just need to get some electricity on the heart to try and shock it. So in Scotland, we'll go to about 8,000 calls a year where we think somebody's in cardiac arrest. And of that 8,000, as you can see on the slide, about 3,000 of these people we're going to throw the kitchen sink at. That's a cardiac arrest. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at you and try and take you to hospital. And as you can see there, that figure of if we are dawdling about and stalling a little bit, the longer we do that, the less likely it is that that person's going to survive. And the defibrillator is key. The defibrillator is the thing, along with maybe a little bit of drugs we can give you, is going to be the thing that restarts your heart. Now, our aspiration is by next year that we have 20% of cardiac arrests will have a defibrillator on before we get there, before we arrive. The current figure is about 8%. So less than 1 in 10 of the times that we arrive at a job that a defibrillator is in use at scene. And this is something that we're trying to tee through. So there's a couple of things that we can try and address. We can flood the market with defibrillators. We can get loads of people trained in CPR. But if at the end of this, nobody's going to actually use the defibrillator, then that's an issue for us. And one of the studies that led us into this working partnership with Strathclyde, one of the studies was that not only did we send Strathclyde our data, and I'll come on to this, is that we also were really interested to understand what happens at scene. So a study that we devised took a little bit of a different view to some other published research. So right across Europe just now, there's loads of studies that are being done to see can we deliver a drone to a bystander. The short answer is, yeah, we kind of can. But what we're interested in is what happens at scene when we deliver the defibrillator. We can have the best drone network. We can have loads of drones all over the UK. We can have a very slick system of dispatch. But what happens when somebody's loved one, often their spouse, if their loved one is having a cardiac arrest and suddenly they hear emergency sirens overhead and there's a drone and it's winching a defibrillator down, or it's landed in their back garden, what's going to happen then? So the first thing we did was we devised a little study, and essentially there's two sides to this diagram. The left-hand side was our control group. We wanted to compare two possible modes of action to deliver a drone. And on the left-hand side is our control group. It's essentially what would happen right now if any of us picked up the phone and said, the patient's not breathing, and we said, we're going to send you a drone by a defibrillator. They're just on the phone with us, just like everybody else. And we wanted to measure how quickly they could collect the drone from a defib if we just gave them verbal instructions over the phone. And it exactly mirrors what would happen if any of us right here phoned and the ambulance service said, quickly run round the corner, there's a defib on the wall there. That would happen right now if we did that. And the right-hand side of the diagram is we wanted to introduce a video clinician, that was myself, to boot up a second call and see if we could help that second bystander navigate to find that drone, to bring back the defibrillator, to see if that would help. So it's not that drones delivering defibrillators in and of themselves is novel, but we recognize that the really crucial part is somebody actually using it. It's only used in 8% of the time just now, and we've got thousands of defibs over the country. So that's what we were interested in. And what we essentially did was we video recorded these people. We put cameras on the patients. We put cameras at scene. And we had cameras that were sitting back, so we measured the whole incident. And then we also video recorded my video call with the patients. And we found some interesting things. And we're not going to get into the weeds of the details today. That's going to be published soon. But we found some interesting things. Some members of the public really loved my comfort that I could give them over the phone. Well done. You're doing great. Calm down. Keep going. And they're like, oh, Jesus, this person's unwell. Some other people felt that I was a bit of a hindrance because they're saying, are the pads on the right place? Let me just show you, Nurse Adam. There. I said, no, you carry on CPR. Okay, have I done this right? Have I shown this? So it's a really interesting area. And that's one part of the problem that we're trying to look into through CAELUS, because we know that the majority of cardiac arrests happen in people's home, and the majority of cardiac arrests happen in a population that is 65 years and older. So we need to be considerate that we can get all the technology right, but if an average 70, 75, 80-year-old has a drone landing in their back garden with a siren, and it's got a defib on it, we need to manage that space. So what can some of the future look like? Well, we've done a little bit of work on simulation, and then we were interested in if there's going to be a drone network and if there's going to be a defibrillator network with drones, how can we offload some of the brain power to Marco and his team? So if you ask AI, what does the future look like? Well, it comes up with this image. And I don't know if this is a major incident that it's come up with, but you're not going to have 3 ambulances turn up at your house for a bit of chest pain, I'll tell you that. So that's what it says. So for us, the drones are not going to replace us. We're always going to be there in a medical emergency, but there's the possibility that drones can assist us. If drones can get there quicker than us, and there's a bystander there who's willing and able to do CPR and to use the defibrillator, then that's what we want to do. So what did we supply with Marco and his team? Well, we looked over an average year, and we gave Marco a number of data points to do with real cardiac arrests. So these were actual patients, all anonymized data, but these were actual patient data where we shared them where they were, how long we took to get there, if there was a public defibrillator used, a public access defib used. And then we offloaded that to Marco and his team, and we said, help us see the fancy maths and geospatial modeling. Can you let us know what those numbers look like? So with that, I'll hand back to Marco, and he can talk you through what he did with that to help us understand whether this was viable and what this looks like in Scotland.
Thank you so much, Adam. So here's the boring part, numbers, graphs. I'll try to make it as entertaining as possible. Apologies. But this is our first pass to the data that we got from Scottish Ambulance. So we try to understand a little bit what is it that we're talking about. What are the numbers? What are the number of cardiac arrests, the number of calls, and how the ambulance, the Scottish service, was able to answer to each one of these calls within a certain time frame. Right? So remember, time frame is a very important element in all this conversation. We cannot come here and say, oh, there's a very strict, precise number, okay? That's not deterministic. That's not how things work. But The message is the quicker the better, okay? So the point here is that we started with these numbers, so we said, okay, where has been the highest number of calls, and how many of these cases were being responded in 2, 4, 6, and 8 minutes. So let's take these initial numbers as our target area. And we can see that, well, there is a good percentage of calls that were answered below 4 minutes, very good one under 6, and so on and so forth. And we said, okay, that's over Scotland. Let's try to do something that is very specific, that is very focused, so we can try to minimize uncertainties, things that we don't know, okay? And we said, Scotland, NHS boards, let's pick up 2. We picked up the Grampian board, and we picked up the Great Glasgow and Clyde area, okay? We picked up those 2 for a specific reason. GGC is a very urban, a lot of people living there, a lot of cities, a lot of villages, and so on. And the other one, Grampian, is a sort of a mix with a sort of drive towards a little bit more rural areas. So we have been living in CAELUS with urban and rural areas, equity of care. Let's do it in this way. It seems that it does make sense. And so we said, okay, again, let's see the Grampian case. Where are the ambulance stations? The crosses that you see there. Where are the population settlements?
So this live flight trial is very important. We're simulating flying chemotherapy from Aberdeen, quite a long route, almost 70 miles up to Dr. Gray's Hospital in Elgin, and also flying blood samples for emergency operations from here down to Aberdeen. So we hope to be able to cut the time from business as usual, which is a taxi or a van, around about 2 hours, to around about an hour in this live flight trial. I think the fundamental strength of this project is that it's a big consortium of 16 partners. And what that brings is a really practical approach to all the various aspects of developing a drone network. So it's not enough just to think about the drones themselves, the routes they're going to go. You have to think about the integration of airspace. You have to think about the regulatory side of it, both for the airspace and for the drones themselves. And so we've been able, with the 16 partners, to look at all the detail of things like how the payloads are packed, how they're conditioned, how they behave in flight. We can measure all the different parameters around that. And that's very important for clinical teams to get confidence that things that are being moved by drone are safe when they get to the other end.
And I think from our logistics and transport colleagues, from our porters to our nurses and the clinical staff that have been involved, they see the benefit of drones and drone delivery technology really enhancing what we do from an urgent care perspective and where we can reach from a rural communities and supporting our colleagues making difficult decisions in rural areas of Scotland.
But really, speed is the essence in these types of things, and I'm an emergency medicine physician, so we're going at pace with everything we do.
Yeah.
So if we can get a sample back or a unit available within an hour versus a unit available within 3 or 4 hours, that may then mean, okay, we can avoid having to use the pressure zone negative and can use a unit which is more specific to the patient.
And it's been remarkable working with people on the air side around how we get from segregated airspace, only flying down very narrow channels with a single drone, to a more integrated airspace, which would allow a network to develop.
AGS airports are proud to be hosting these groundbreaking flight trials here in Grampian on the doorstep of our very own Aberdeen Airport.
So NATS is really proud to be working alongside AGS, Skyports and the NHS to allow drone flights inside controlled airspace. Alongside live flights, we've been running simulations to provide as much data and evidence as possible to work towards the goals of the whole project. Ultimately, everything we see from this project and the evidence and data we collect will provide a safe and more efficient trials in the future.
So going forward into the future, there's lots of lessons learned that we can take with us, just the way that we work within the NHS and within innovation projects. In terms of drones and enabling medical logistics, we really want to be in the vanguard of this within the NHS. Working with aviation colleagues, we're aware that commercial drone services will be part of society in the future. And I guess the NHS can be early adopters of that new technology to benefit our patients and benefit our services in society, or we can be laggards. But enabling innovation through these regional test beds, I'm confident that we'll be early adopters of this technology.
You can see these light yellow shaded areas where you can identify maybe some major cities over there. And then we go and see, we have 17 ambulance stations. We have approximately 500,000 people living it. And we started saying what the ambulance can do in terms of coverage. So here we had to make a number of assumptions to make the numbers and the analysis possible. So we assumed that all the ambulances were starting from the ambulance stations. We know that this is not the case. Sometimes ambulances are already around, but we don't have a way to model this. So first thing is, let's take these as conservative measures. And then we created our model that, based on Google Map, allowed us to say, okay, if we take certain threshold, which is 8 minutes, these are the areas that we can cover with the ambulances. So this means that if you are unlucky, that you have a cardiac arrest in anywhere of the areas that is not dark green, you are looking at more than 8 minutes on average, give it or take it, for an ambulance to get there with paramedics to apply the pads. And then we said, okay, if this is the case, how these maps with the calls that Adam was mentioning earlier. And you can see that, well, the majority, of course, come from areas that are very densely populated, but there are some outliers. There are areas where ambulance, according to this model that has some assumptions, cannot reach within 8 minutes. And let's see what we can do. And I want to leave you here hanging, okay, suspense, because now we move to the other board, which is GGC. Same kind of information, right? Now all condensed into one slide, since we are now into the business of it. So that's the area, yellow, densely populated area, green, the areas that the ambulances can reach within 8 minutes, always starting from the ambulance station, assuming an average traffic along the road. Google Map allows you to do that. And red dots show you where you have the highest concentration of calls, according to the data that we received. Here we are looking at many more people living there, 1.7 million, so maybe approximately 3 times what we had in the Grampian. And here, again, similar table that shows how Scottish Ambulance Service was able to respond to these calls. So remember before, I was talking about there are a lot of PAD, public access defibrillator, around. The following slide will give you an interesting view about how many of these public access defibrillators are actually used in these cases. If you wonder, it's the green one. Okay, so in the Grampian area, well, we split it across the year because so you know when you can go safely on holiday and when instead you should stay home. But what you could see is that there is a lot of blue in this image, meaning that for a lot of cases, cardiac arrest cases, public access defibrillators were not used, not only because they were not available, but because maybe, as Adam said, maybe people was not aware, people get there, I don't know how to use it, how do we do, and so on and so forth, okay? That's Grampian, say 12% they were not used. Even more scary is this image here, because here we are in Greater Glasgow. It's true, the numbers are different, right? 500,000, 1.7 million, true. So let's not fool ourselves, but the green is very small compared to the blue. 6%, which means that even if we have these public access defibrillators, the role of paramedics still, right now, as of today, is super important. It plays a role. I mean, no matter what, I mean, we can be as smart as we want. Adam said we can float the market with the PAD. Well, right now, probably the culture is still not there. And so that's why drones can be helpful, because now we can still support our paramedics. So now, no more anxiety. Let's go into the numbers. Let's go into see how drones can really do the stuff. Here, I just wanted to summarize a little bit the drivers of this analysis, saying that, what do we do? We try to create a system of drones that cover 90% of the cases that we have recorded, that Scottish Ambulance have recorded, or we want to have a little bit more, let's say, ecumenic approach, saying, no, we want to cover the settlement. There is no right or wrong answer. It's a matter of trade-off. It's a matter of understanding what works better, okay? And we had to do a little bit, again, of assumptions in terms of the drones, right? So we had models of the drones, Skyports and non-Skyports drone, in our digital twin. We had models for the weather. We did a little bit of average and so on and so forth. And we used all the important results that Adam was mentioning before in their analysis, in their simulation, to make an assessment of a very important phase in all this process, which is the time that goes from when someone picks up the defibrillator from the drone all the way to the moment the very first shock is applied. It doesn't matter if you are there very fast, in a second. What really matters is the time from the call to the shock. That's the metric. That's where you have to live with, okay? This is what we have. So this is what our lens into the future allows us to say for covering all 90% of the calls, or being a more equity-based approach. 17 drone station, DS is used as a symbol to drone station. In one case, 24 drone stations if you are considering 90% of all the settlement. And if you think it's not that much, honestly, it's similar to the number of ambulance stations. So you have an ambulance station, you put a drone there, a lot of the job has already been done, okay? And we have done also through our partners a little bit of economic assessment, and the numbers look good. Don't want to say the numbers now because it's not my job, but the numbers really look good in terms of cost. But apart from cost, here we're talking about saving lives, right? So you can't put a cost on life. And what we see here, if we just focus on the 90% of the coverage of the settlement, the numbers are telling us that under 8 minutes, we can cover 93% of the calls. By ambulance, we were able to cover 71%. If you put the threshold of the time down and you now look at 6 minutes, that's what you have, 68% of the call with the drone there. And again, please remember, this time that I am talking about is the time when the drone takes off, but not the drone takes off, from the call all the way to the first shock is applied. That's very important. We didn't have this kind of statistics for what were the ambulance case. So again, a little bit of difference here. Covering a relatively large area, we showed that 50% of the time, 1 out of 2 times, the drone beats the ambulance to the scene where a cardiac arrest has occurred. Other case is urban area, Greater Glasgow and Clyde, okay? In this case, the numbers are even smaller, 6 or 10 drone stations, 10. Look, fingers of my hands. 10 drone stations over Greater Glasgow and Clyde. So what you see there are those big blue circles. I forgot to mention, sorry, that is the area where you are covered, the area that you are covering with the drones. And if we have, again, a little bit of a look into the numbers, well, it's true, GGC is not as big as Grampian, but an output of 100% under 8 minutes, seems pretty good to me. I don't know, right? 6 minutes is 70%. So overall, we could see that with 10 drones in GGC, we can respond in 54% of the time faster than the ambulance, okay? And these are numbers that are somehow comforting because they show that we are really looking at something that is rooted in the numbers and gives hope for the future, right? So I just want to maybe give you an example of how all this logic of drone-assisted defibrillator delivery works. With one specific case, emergency call where the red dot, the red pin is, it's a little west of where we are now, and we want now to make a race. Who will win? Is the drone or the ambulance? Okay? So that's an emergency call. Here, Google Maps shows you where you have to drive. That's the fastest route according to a sort of average of the traffic over the route with the nearest ambulance station that is available there. Okay, so we did a little bit of estimation because unfortunately the episode occurred not on the side of the street, but by someone who was doing a hike in that area. And so you have 11 minutes of driving time, but 7 minutes hiking. So you have paramedics with backpacks, a lot of stuff in it. Hiking might not be very comfortable. And we have now tried to see how we can work the same case with a drone. I'm anticipating here the results, so spoiler alert, 5 minutes and 45 seconds as opposed to 18 minutes as before. But let me show you how this works, okay? So we have, the call is arriving. Is the patient, is the person breathing or not? No, it's not. Immediately, automatically, there's a flag going on into the SAS system that says, there's a cardiac arrest. We need to send a drone, okay? So there's a little process that all goes in the background. Shepherd, it's not only for designing a drone, it's also for supporting all these kind of background operations. We need to identify the nearest drone. We need to generate the flight path, make sure that this flight path is compliant, it works, it's safe, it goes with the rules, with the airspace. You saw some interesting conversation from NATS and the CAA and so on. And then we need to upload the flight path to the drone. We're just making it very, very step by step, right? But all these things go very fast. If you look at the top right, 20 seconds have passed along this to complete these steps. And then we have the takeoff of the drone that we simplify as a little red dot in all these images. It's not, but it's the best we could do graphically. And then we have the actual drone flying, and this simulation is what the digital twin can do among various things. So you see how your drone is taking off from the station where it was, one of those that were designed in this case, and then is flying, reaching the location where the cardiac arrest is, and then there is the landing phase. Now, we consider the landing phase as something as a little bit of different, because here we want to make sure that we don't land on a tree, or we don't land on somewhere where there's no accessibility. We don't want to land on the head of the person, so there is a little bit of camera that is looking after where is the area that we can land safely. And then we have the final step, which is, again, the application of the shock. So we have made a number of assumptions that, of course, cannot always be true. But these are assumptions that allowed us to do this analysis, and we keep constantly a channel open with SAS to improve these assumptions, to make them more realistic and to make sure that they work. And one of these was, again, how do we deal with weather? Everybody's concerned about weather. So we know that if there are specific strong winds, we cannot fly, and then we need to deal with it. And we have also started doing a little bit of analysis. Here you see the two boards. You can see the winter scenario. Green, you can fly a lot. Red, well, you might have to be grounded for a little while. But this is, again, conversation that may link to what our friends from the technology side can do and develop in terms of drones that are more resilient to weather. So in conclusion, here we have shown you essentially an example, actually two, but something that is very vivid. It's rooted in number. It shows you black on white, well, in this case, black on light green, how things can change if we seriously consider drones for what is their application into the emergency scenario. So maybe I just want to let the closure to Adam, which is the appropriate one.
So, Innovation Ambulance Service is fairly new to us. We couldn't have done this without the expertise of the Strathclyde team and the wider consortium, and we're fortunate Ambulance Service now to be really warming up to the real potential of innovation, to explore things like this. We're fortunate our chair, Tom, who's here today, is very supportive of the innovation work we do. We're led by Paul, and we have now an innovation hub in Ambulance Service, so we're progressing from a service which has traditionally been arrive at the home, pick the patient up, take them to hospital, to now stepping into these type of spaces and making capacity for it. And if we bring all of that together, one of the things that we were able to do through CAELUS was think about how do we take the public on this journey with us? How do we highlight that no longer is Ambulance Service just one type of thing, that we do want to explore these type of initiatives and programs. So a video that I'm just going to show, and I think a number of colleagues here have seen this a couple of times, so bear with us if you've seen it before, kind of paints a vision to the public, to us as Ambulance Service, to the wider NHS about what can an imagined future look like if drones were to realise the potential that Marco's helped us understand. So hopefully this works. And I should say I'm only in this video because I don't think anybody else was available. So bear with me.
Adam, speak to me. Adam, what's going on? Adam! Hello, ambulance, please.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
No, he's sort of breathing strangely. He's gasping.
What is the address of the emergency?
It's near the Ayrshire farm shop. We're outside, we're on the footpath.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
We were just walking, he was just talking to me, and then he just collapsed, he just keeled over, he's on the floor, I can't get him up.
I'm organising help for you now. Stay on the line, I'll tell you exactly what to do next. Listen carefully, lay them flat on their back on the floor and remove anything under their head. Listen carefully and I'll tell you how to do chest compressions. Place the heel of your hand on the breastbone, right between the nipples. Put your other hand on top of that hand. Pump the chest hard and fast, at least twice per second and 2 inches deep. Let the chest come all the way up between pumps. We're going to do this until help can take over. Count out loud so I can count with you. Okay, start counting out loud now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue with the chest compressions. I'm sending you a drone which is carrying a defibrillator. It will arrive in 5 minutes. Over and over, don't give up. This will help keep them going until the ambulance crew arrives. Okay, the drone is arriving now. Continue chest compressions. Tell the bystander to collect the defibrillator and bring it back to the patient.
The ambulance service is sending a drone with the defibrillator. I need you to go and collect it.
next to their head on the side closest to you. Open the packet of pads, peel off the backing and apply the pads to their bare chest as shown. The machine will tell you what to do. Follow its instructions. Tell me what you're doing so I'll know how it's going. Don't stop chest compressions until the ambulance crew take over from you.
Well, we've got a pulse, if you just stop doing the compressions. I'd just like to give you this card. It's from the Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland advice line, so the number on that, if you give them a call just for a wee bit of support.
I am available for other work if anybody is paying. So in that video, we've really captured the whole spectrum of that system of care that has to stack up to help the ambulance service with bystanders, with community first responders, via the Good Sam app. Let me just plug that with everybody today. Sign up to the Good Sam app. It's not owned by us. It's just a Good Samaritan app. And I guess the really sharp edges of that stuff, we couldn't have done by ourselves. We couldn't have done this mapping without the help of Mark on the team. And we couldn't have done it without being part of CAELUS too. So thanks to Fiona for her leadership of this, of folding us in here with the NHS, because our use case was quite unique and it was different. And thanks to Hazel and Karen for providing the NHS leadership of keeping us in sync with everybody. So yeah, that's us, and we just look forward to any potential next phases of CAELUS and continuing this.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for that presentation. It's an incredible piece of work that's gone into there to see the real world data and what the use of drones could do. Picking up on some of the panels earlier, drones being a force for good. There's the example of that, of what it can do for the future as well. It's incredible. So we're nearing the end of our day. I'm going to introduce one of our last videos from one of our partners, which is from Plane Finder. And obviously just want to say thank you, Plane Finder, for being one of our consortium partners. So hopefully this just plays straight away for me.
Hi, I'm Lee Armstrong, CTO of Plane Finder. As the Project CAELUS surveillance partner, we deployed our multi-protocol tracking hardware, decoding software, data APIs and visualization technologies to deliver trusted information to stakeholders across the project. We were all proud to see our CAELUS developed flight information display, or FID for short, embraced with such great effect by both NHS colleagues and air traffic professionals across Project CAELUS. During the project, a version of the Plane Finder FID also became the first of its kind to be approved for use in a UK aerodrome. Our work on CAELUS has proven the value of our industry-leading end-to-end surveillance technologies. Here at Plane Finder, we are all excited that our work is already continuing beyond CAELUS as we support the CAA and other stakeholders to shape and ultimately enable a truly integrated airspace across the UK. From the entire Plane Finder team, it's been a real joy for us to work alongside so many talented and passionate people in the NHS and across the CAELUS partners. We very much look forward to working with many of you beyond CAELUS.
I'm going to invite Gary Cutts, the UKRI Challenge Director for Future Flight Up, to give us our closing remarks. The final thing to say is I've been delighted to host today with you as well. I want to say thank you personally to all the panellists and to everyone who's done a presentation. But to give you the final remarks today, Gary, please.
Thank you so much. I was going to, it is my style, start off characteristically light-hearted, but I just have to pause and say that that's an incredibly emotional video. It really is. It's what we're all about, things that really, really matter. But I'm going to go light-hearted having said that, though, because interestingly, I wanted to remind myself who all the partners were in Project CAELUS, so I had a little Google for Project CAELUS this morning. Has anybody done that recently? And do you know what the second thing that comes up if you do Project CAELUS is? It's a music album. There is a music album, Project CAELUS, by an artist, Oka. Interesting thought. I don't know if anyone's moonlighting, and I'm not going to lie, I'm secretly hoping that all 12 partners, 16 partner companies jump on stage and there's some amazing musical thing there. But yeah, Project CAELUS predates you as well, the music album, so watch out for the IPR claims. This is going to sound light-hearted too, but this is not. This is just something that sort of amused me this morning. I was having my meal in the hotel just down the way here, and the waiter came and was really polite but kind of perfunctory, normal kind of waiter stuff. And at the end, they always have a part where they want to say, "Why are you in town? What are you here for?" kind of thing. And I said something along the lines of, it's a closeout event for a really important local project on electric aviation and using drones. And instantly, it became really animated. Now, that doesn't happen with everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But it was really interesting. It was that's fabulous, and what have you been doing? And he'd heard of some of the trials here, so it meant something straight away. And we then 5 minutes of conversation with somebody who was genuinely excited, enthusiastic, and knew all about the stuff that was happening in Project CAELUS. I imagine if I'd been here for an actuarial conference, it would have been less stimulating, with apologies to any actuaries in the audience. So what we do, what you've done, genuinely is that interesting, exciting. People know of it, it has impact, and it matters to people as well. I want to rewind a little bit, and I don't want to take too long this afternoon. When you're the last speaker, you really don't want to unpack everything over 45 minutes. So just a little trawl through what we've been doing in Future Flight Challenge and reflect on CAELUS. And repeat probably a couple of points I made earlier. But if you go back to the start of the Future Flight Challenge, there's a really heavy business case. There just is for government programs. There's 30-odd pages of detail in there. But at its heart, there were always three objectives we had in doing the Future Flight Challenge. So number one, it is innovation for the economy. It is about jobs, about high-value jobs. It's about growth. It's about the economic stimulation piece. And the UK doing more than its fair share in this new aviation system. The second part of it, bit I alluded to before, is hopefully that transfer of technology, that we're bringing in new thinking, new entrants to the aviation system, and some of that will feed its way through into large aviation. I'm convinced that will happen as well. Then the third bit was always this sort of societal benefit, that we're working on things that matter to people. Now, you don't have to do that. Government can absolutely work on programs that drive growth and create jobs, and that is a good societal benefit in its own right. But for us, our business case always talked about, aviation for good, about doing things have societally important outcomes. And I love CAELUS. I mean, I love a lot of our projects, but CAELUS is a really interesting one because it demonstrably covers all three of those angles. And again, going back to a comment I made earlier, it has got two or three, if I can call them traditional aviation companies, AGS being prime as the lead in there, who partnered with a range of other people. So you get that, the project with a social outcome, a social good, absolutely creating a hub of capability, innovation, and hopefully jobs in this region and across Scotland. And then absolutely that transfer of knowledge from new startups, tech entrants going into large aviation. So CAELUS has had the whole package of that kind of work. One of the many reasons that we love it. I do think it's also important to recognise we selected our projects based on merit, how they fit with the portfolio, how good they were based on merit. And there's always been a really heavy preponderance of activity in Scotland. There just has. Two of our three biggest projects have been here. Project SATE. There'll be some overlap. Some people will have been in both conferences. Project CAELUS. So there's actually a huge preponderance of technical capability, willingness to partner, and then the right approach to innovation across Scotland. So the regional aspect matters a lot. And that's always been a big thing for Innovate UK, that place-based innovation, bringing people together, clusters and hubs, driving capability. So we've had a lot of that going on in here. For us, and I'm going to go back to that video, the deliverables out of CAELUS, there are many, but driving a capability, the drone operational capability, the concepts of operations, the airspace concepts, piloting and driving those, your challenges you've had in some of the regulation. We know that's driven the regulator to speed up and look at how they regulate. So if you can unpack all of the deliverables of Project CAELUS, it's sort of been pushing the boundaries of most of the things that we want to do. So a really important project in that. And I can't stress that enough, because And this is the bit I've always loved about this job. It's not what I would, my systems engineer, it's not convergent thinking. We're not homing in on really single point things. We're bringing people together and we're broadening the approach, we're broadening the range of things that can be done. And although, of course, all projects are trying to close down and deliver real hard milestones, in doing CAELUS, lots of things have been pushed on a very broad front. So a really important, societally significant kind of programme of work. And if I can, I want to bring to a close, I do want to talk about what's next. Now, we'd have loved last week in our closeout conference for the Future Flight Challenge, celebration activity, or at one of these events, we'd have loved to be able to tell you precisely what's going to happen from a Future Flight Challenge point of view. And I don't know, I can't do that. It would be quite wrong to pretend that I can. We're really hopeful that there is a next phase of some sort. We can see very clearly what needs to be done, and we talked about this earlier. Love to go to the absolute commercialization. So we come out of, sort of, because there's always innovation to do, we come out of the hardcore innovation and we're trying to do that transition collectively to large social, societal application where people are making commercial money and we're growing the jobs and industry across the region. We'd see that happening across the next 3 years or so. So if we get a chance, that's what we'll do. It will be regional use case based, possibly with public sector use cases, but doing that complete transition to the commercialization. We just don't have a remit to do that yet. But what I want to leave you on is kind of try to abstract from that. Whatever happens with the supporting program that will or will not happen, because we don't know, whatever happens, just don't let that worry us. What's happened here is you've built the most wonderful, integrated, conjoined community with shared purpose and vision, hopefully started to grow the seeds of innovation capabilities here and build jobs for the future and skills and create an ecosystem, as Andrew said. It's a really important word. That's what's happened. You've created an ecosystem across this region and across Scotland. And I think whatever happens to the Future Flight Challenge, you've formed the kind of bedrock on which you can do the next stages of this, turn this into really important commercial applications. Back to my 3 bits at the start. Really important commercial applications, doing societal good, and then transitioning that technology into the wider aviation activity. So for me, it remains to be said, this will go somewhere, whatever happens. It's incredibly important. I think partnerships will continue to flourish from this. And I just want to leave you personally with a thank you, because it's quite weird. I get thanked personally at quite a lot of these conferences. And I keep reminding everybody, I've put none of my money into this. I have as a taxpayer. This is all taxpayers' money. Unfortunately, I didn't have £125 million down the back of a sofa to sponsor you. I might have done if I had, because it's really good work. But people like to thank us for what we've done. But for Simon and I who are here from the challenge, it's sort of the other way around. This is an incredibly uplifting job. It really is. It's marvellous to watch that stuff happen. But it actually happens through projects like yours. So it's my thanks to you for the project work. Thanks to the community for embracing it, but also just thanks to pulling the country forward in this wide-scale innovation. It's been a real pleasure to work with you, and we wish you well. Thank you.